Life in Pluto's original world is a constant nightmare of danger, hunger, discrimination, and endless killing. To make matters worse, there's constant war, a living hell he blames on his country simply being too weak. That weakness costs him everything, and his life ends the moment his country falls and he gets shot down. But just as everything goes black, a mysterious glowing hand reaches out to pull him from the dark. That light resurrects him into a brand new world where he spends 3 years preparing for today's big awakening ceremony. Now his teacher is shouting that this ceremony is the exact moment that'll define their entire lives. This is because their world had suddenly changed, overrun by dungeons and monsters that forced humanity to fight back by awakening ranked classes from C to S. In this harsh new reality, this awakened class is the sole measure of a person's worth. Moments later, the crowd goes wild as Luna, the elite heiress, awakens as an S-rank purification saint with an incredible talent score of 95. But while everyone is still buzzing about her, some students in the stands are already hyped for the next guy up. That would be Pluto, who gets called up to the stage next. He walks out looking incredibly cool as the announcer reveals he scored a mind-blowing 200 talent points, the highest in the entire city. Luna confronts him on the stairs, giving him an intense and serious look. Standing face to face, she quietly tells him not to let her down. She then watches him walk past, noting that he is still as quiet as ever. Moments later, the crowd erupts in cheers as his name is called to begin his own awakening. There, the academy instructor tells him to place his hand over the orb, thinking about Pluto's legendary 200 talent points and how an S-rank class will guarantee him a spot in the prestigious Azure Dragon Guild. This guild is known as the absolute peak of power and status in the nation. To him, a spot there means ultimate glory, but more importantly, it's the nation's military guild, and he's determined not to die like a dog again like he did in his past life when his weak nation was invaded. So, vowing to make himself and his country the strongest this time, he touches the orb, releasing an intense blast of light that makes everyone believe he's definitely awakening an S-rank class. But as the light fades, the faces of Luna and the instructor instantly freeze in shock. That's because the screen reveals his class is a necromancer, sending a wave of disbelief through the crowd. Immediately, a dead silence falls over the entire plaza as dark purple energy swirls around him. While one student thinks the dark aura looks cool enough to be S-rank, another quickly points out that a necromancer is actually the absolute worst C-rank class. He is absolutely devastated, staring in disbelief and wondering where he went wrong. His status screen quickly confirms this harsh reality, showing that his level 0 stats are completely average. Seeing the result, the examiner scoffs in disappointment, muttering that he actually had high hopes for him. But as Pluto looks at his basic summoning skill, a bizarre system notification suddenly pops up, removing his summoning limits entirely. He realizes this is huge, because normally a necromancer can only summon once every 30 minutes, but now he can summon 10 soldiers instantly. With his summons getting stronger as he levels up, he envisions himself leading an unstoppable one-man army of skeletal beasts. Confident that this single cheat skill is enough to crush even S ranks, he resolves to absolutely ace his upcoming interview. Just then, the examiner snaps him out of his thoughts, barking at him to stop spacing out and move along. He finds it hilarious how quickly everyone's attitude flipped the second they saw his low-rank class. Still, he walks away with a smirk, knowing that grinding levels in the dungeons is going to be a total breeze. Behind his back, the other students whisper in confusion about why he looks so hyped after getting such a terrible rank. That is when Adrian approaches him with a smug grin, mockingly calling him the elite class's fallen golden boy. The bully continues to talk trash, mocking him for his low rank and offering to let him become his pet, making him realize this rival has always held a grudge. His girlfriend giggles along as the arrogant teen keeps fantasizing about having a former genius as an obedient little puppy. But the boy just walks right past them, deciding that responding to such trash isn't worth his breath. Suddenly, a voice calls out, impressed that he didn't let the trash get to him. He turns around and is surprised to see Luna standing there. Still, he's not really in the mood for jokes and tries to keep walking. That's when she catches him off guard by offering to take him grinding. He wonders if an S rank carrying a C rank like him would just be a pain, but she shuts that down instantly. She reminds him that he's aiming for the Azure Dragon Guild, so a quick power leveling session is exactly what he needs. Grabbing his arm, she tells him she has total faith in him, knowing those 200 talent points mean he's no ordinary necromancer. Pluto smiles, thinking about how sharp she is, and thanks her for being willing to help him out. But he ultimately passes on the offer, determined to make it into the guild on his own terms. By leveling up so fast he'll crush every A rank and S rank in his way. Soon after, he arrives at the Pact Academy dungeon hall, looking for the fastest way to level up through the sequenced trials. He's completely locked in, swearing to surpass everyone who ever doubted him. The trials are no joke, forcing challengers to go solo against scaling monsters with absolutely no way to back out once they start. It's basically a suicide mission for anyone who isn't high rank, but the massive experience boost makes the insane risk totally worth it. Watching from afar, his homeroom teacher is shocked to see him enter, fearing his low rank has driven him to seek death. She tries to calm her racing thoughts, deciding to stay put and watch over him in case he needs immediate backup. Meanwhile, inside the trial, he stands in the safe zone, fully aware there is no turning back once he steps out. He looks down at a massive, aggressive pack of void hounds waiting for him. He realizes why rookies avoid this place, seeing 10 level 1 monsters waiting on the lowest floor. He summons 2 necromantic soldiers, eager to test their strength against these beasts. He orders his summons to focus their attacks on the front hounds. After taking them down, he gains experience and realizes these mobs are totally manageable if he keeps summoning soldiers. He reflects on how quickly he went from being the center of attention to becoming the butt of everyone's jokes. In a flashback, a teacher yells at him to stop spacing out and get moving. Adrian mocks him, bragging about his A-rank status and offering to let Pluto be his pet. He remembers a soldier calling his people an inferior race, noting that these monsters have that exact same look. Fueled by these memories, he is absolutely determined to never let the past repeat, swearing to become the absolute strongest even as his remaining MP drops to 0. Pluto figures his 10 mana and 10 max skeleton soldiers should easily get him through the first floor. He sends 2 skeletons after each hound for maximum efficiency, immediately taking one down for 20 experience points. As more notifications pop up confirming more kills, he realizes he'll easily hit level 2 in under 10 minutes. Since his mana regenerates at 1 point per minute, 10 minutes is also the perfect amount of time for a full recovery. Smiling at the thought of building a massive skeleton army, he commands his summons to charge forward. The skeletons rush ahead, brandishing their weapons with terrifying speed. They quickly tear through the remaining beasts, racking up even more experience points for their master. Suddenly, a massive burst of energy surrounds him as he levels up much faster than he ever anticipated. He notes that leveling up grants 5 stat points and restores some mana, meaning he can strategically summon a ton of soldiers mid-fight. Without hesitation, he dumps all 5 of his new stat points directly into his mana pool. With his maximum mana increased, he can now summon up to 15 skeleton soldiers at once. Looking down with glowing purple eyes, he decides it's finally time to tackle the second floor. He steps onto the new level, where one of his summons immediately takes down a howling gray wolf. After dispatching another beast, he reminds himself to stay cautious since he's still a fragile glass cannon. Soon, a massive burst of energy signals another level up, and he happily dumps his new points into mana. With his increased mana, he realizes he's unlocked a perfect loop where more mana means more soldiers, leading to faster levels. As he ventures deeper into the dungeon, he notices the monsters are starting to get much stronger. Suddenly, a dark horse with glowing red eyes confronts him, breathing heavily. But Pluto just smiles, ordering his skeleton soldiers to charge since these horses are just easy experience points. One of his skeletons leaps forward, delivering a heavy blow straight to the beast's face. Together, they quickly tear the monster apart, earning him another chunk of experience. Although the enemies are strong enough to destroy his summons now, he isn't worried at all. That's because he has soldiers in spades, instantly summoning an army of 30 skeletons to overwhelm them. His massive army easily sweeps through the herd, racking up kills and experience notifications in seconds. This triggers a massive level up, pushing him all the way to level 5. Best of all, reaching this milestone qualifies him to unlock a brand new restriction removal. He is thrilled to see that yet another restriction on his class has been lifted. A system notification reveals that the evolution lock is gone, meaning his soldiers can now permanently absorb defeated enemies to evolve. He quickly realizes this means any enemy he defeats can be turned into an undead version of themselves. With a smug grin, Pluto notes that a higher kill count means a much more diverse army, which makes him feel like something grand. He envisions himself standing proudly over a mountain of skulls as the true king of the underworld. Then he remembers that necromancers unlock a new skill every 5 levels, and he just got the gunpowder skeleton, a summon that rushes enemies and detonates. Thrilled to finally have area of effect damage, he can't wait to test these explosive summons in his next trial. Soon, he faces his targets in the level 5 trial, a pack of heavily armored blackback beasts. Since his regular soldiers would take forever to chip through their thick hides, he decides they are the perfect test subjects for his new skill. With a snap of his fingers, he orders the conversion, and a skeleton's head bursts into purple flames. He eagerly calls for his new gunpowder skeleton to show what it can do, but his excitement quickly turns to silence. Out run a couple of skeletons carrying massive wooden barrels on their heads, looking incredibly goofy. Pluto facepalms at how janky they look, but sighs and tells them to just make sure the explosion hits hard. One of the skeletons charges forward, holding the heavy barrel high above its flaming head. A blackback beast bellows in confusion as the little skeleton runs right up to it with a lit fuse. A massive explosion rocks the area, and he is absolutely blown away by how much damage his new skill just did. As system notifications spam him with experience points for taking down the beasts, he realizes he shouldn't have underestimated his own class. After that crazy blast, he looks at his status screen and realizes he needs to boost his mana to keep spamming those gunpowder skeletons, which means he'll need some decent caster gear. But as he walks away, he notes that while the experience was great, he didn't get a single item drop, meaning these trials only give experience and no loot. So, he decides his next stop has to be the Academy's pro shop, though he really hopes the gear there isn't too expensive. Meanwhile, his homeroom teacher watches him step out of the portal, completely shocked to see him walk out without a single scratch. She can't believe he actually reached level 5 in just 1 hour, making her realize that despite his low rank, his massive talent points make him a total anomaly who needs to be reported to the principal immediately. Over in the main office, Principal Julian Kingsley is buried in paperwork after the awakening ceremony, complaining about being interrupted when he has so much on his plate. But when the teacher rushes in to talk about Pluto, Julian gets annoyed, wondering why she's bothering him over a C rank when they have so many high-ranking students to focus on. However, she explains that a level 0 Necromancer just hit level 5 in an hour, which Julian completely rejects, arguing that a weak summoner would get shredded by Voidhounds in minutes. Since he's so sure it's impossible, she simply asks him to explain how the boy actually managed to pull it off. Meanwhile, Pluto is out in the city looking at gear, but he quickly realizes that even the cheapest staff is way out of his budget, meaning he'll have to farm dungeons for drops instead. Standing outside his destination, he watches a beaten-up team limp out of the portal, realizing Giant Rhino Mountain is no joke. Still, he's determined to push his limits, so he steps up to the console and selects Gold difficulty. Once inside, he's amazed by the massive canyon views before immediately summoning his necromantic soldiers. He plans to rush straight to the boss, knowing his massive mana pool lets him summon an endless army of skeletons. His strategy pays off instantly as his skeletons take down a rhino, earning him some quick experience. But the victory is short-lived as another massive rock beast charges out with a loud roar. This giant rock rhino looks way tougher than the last ones, staring down his skeletal frontline. Pluto quickly notices that his soldiers' basic physical attacks barely scratch the monster's thick hide. However, he's got plenty of tricks up his sleeve and prepares to use a different kind of magic. With a quick command, he converts one of his summons into a flaming gunpowder skeleton carrying a massive barrel. The explosive skeleton blows the beast to pieces, earning Pluto a massive chunk of experience points. By turning his own soldiers into walking bombs, he blows up the giant rock rhinos and easily hits level 6. But then the massive giant rock rhino king emerges, towering over him and his skeleton army. While Pluto is surprised by how huge this level 5 boss is, he isn't worried at all. Instead, he smugly tells the monster it's already dead, surrounded by nearly 100 of his skeleton bombs. The massive blast completely vaporizes the boss, instantly pushing Pluto to level 7 and dropping an epic tier staff. He's absolutely thrilled with the loot, recalling how gear rarity is strictly color-coded in this world. While common white gear drops all the time, the higher tiers are supposed to be incredibly rare. Snagging an epic tier caster staff on his very first run makes him realize his luck is totally insane. He admires his new rare gear, noting that high-quality equipment like this usually costs at least 100 gold. He reasons that the extra defense makes up for his low stats, and more importantly, dumping all his level-up points into mana brings his total MP to 75. With that much mana, he realizes with a glowing gaze that he can now summon 75 soldiers all at once. But his quiet moment is interrupted when Adrian shows up with a smug grin, offering Pluto one last chance to beg for his scraps. The bully gets in Pluto's face, but Pluto doesn't even flinch, staring back calmly. Seeing no reaction, Adrian mocks him for camping outside dungeons, sneering that nobody wants to carry a useless C-rank trash like him. Adrian then flaunts his own rare weapon, arrogantly telling Pluto to become his obedient dog if he wants gear, carries, or even women. His lackeys join in on the teasing, calling Pluto a lost puppy and laughing that a failure like him will end up dying a virgin. As they burst into laughter, a blonde girl in their group sneers that no woman would ever touch a creep like him anyway. Pluto finally speaks up, warning them that he is only going to say this once, which catches Adrian completely off guard. With a cold, fierce glare, he bluntly tells the arrogant bully to get lost. Adrian gets right in Pluto's face, grabbing him by the tie, but a nearby classmate steps in to warn them that fighting in the dungeon hall is strictly forbidden. Meanwhile, the tension rises as a crowd starts gathering around the two boys. Then, a security guard spots the commotion and yells to find out what is going on. When the guard asks if they are trying to start a fight, Adrian quickly backs off and lies, claiming they are just old classmates messing around. The guard barks at them to stop loitering and either enter a dungeon or get out, but Adrian asks for just 1 second to say goodbye to his buddy. He leans in and whispers a threat, telling Pluto he got lucky this time, but will be finished the moment he steps outside. Adrian then walks away with his group, loudly declaring that they need to hit level 5 today. Pluto watches them go with glowing purple eyes, thinking to himself that he would have absolutely crushed Adrian right then and there if they had not been interrupted. The guard approaches Pluto and tells him to come find him if those punks cause any more trouble, which Pluto quietly thanks him for. But as Pluto heads toward a high-level portal, the guard panics and warns him that he will never find a party for it, suggesting he stick to the level 1 bunny meadow instead. Suddenly, the guard freezes in absolute shock as he notices something incredible. He spots the giant rock staff in Pluto's hand while the young man prepares to make his daily dungeon runs to grind some levels. The guard realizes that the staff only drops from the giant rock Rhino King on gold difficulty, leaving him completely stunned by what this kid has already accomplished. Meanwhile, his homeroom teacher is also left speechless, watching the young man solo giant Rhino Mountain with 3 daily runs still remaining. Back inside the dungeon, Pluto decides to pick up the pace to burn through all his remaining runs today. Watching from the monitoring room, the teacher is shocked to realize he chose the gold difficulty level. He sweats in disbelief, realizing that soloing a gold-tier dungeon at Pluto's level is something even S-rank hunters can't pull off. Meanwhile, a massive, glowing-eyed beast roars furiously right in front of Pluto and his skeleton crew. Looking completely unfazed, Pluto smirks and asks the monster who it thinks it's bearing its fangs at. With a massive explosion, the giant rock Rhino King goes down, netting him 5,000 experience points and leaving him with 2 runs left. Soon after, another massive rhino boss spawns and huffs heavily right in Pluto's face. He just smiles, amused that these monsters never seem to learn their lesson. Another massive explosion rips through the dungeon as his explosive skeletons carry out their deadly work. Pluto orders them to keep going, and the system confirms he has only 1 run remaining after another boss falls. Looking over his inventory, Pluto notes that he got plenty of gear loot but nothing he can actually use. So he decides to sell it all and call it a day. Walking out of the portal, he reminds himself that he has the rookie professional test coming up tomorrow morning. His updated status screen shows he is now level 9, with boosted mana and defense stats from his gear. The next morning, a massive crowd gathers at Aurora Academy for the big event. The students buzz with excitement as observers from the prestigious Azure Dragon Guild arrive to scout the test, with everyone bragging about their levels after a day of grinding. Overhearing their boasting, Pluto can't help but wonder why they all level up so incredibly slowly compared to him. But his thoughts are cut short when Adrian Blackwood sneaks up behind him, mockingly asking how his useless necromancer grind is going. Adrian proudly boasts about hitting level 5 and asks if Pluto has found anyone willing to carry him yet. Before things can escalate, the presenter calls for silence and announces that the rookie professional test is officially starting. He explains that the Azure Dragon Guild will recruit the top 5 performers, and the absolute best will walk away with epic-grade gear. The students look up at the balcony, whispering in awe at the VIPs watching over them. Standing up there is Elder Aaron Crowley, a legendary high-level professional known for his endless supply of mana. The presenter then lays out the rules, explaining that Aaron will continuously spawn summons in each room, and they have 30 minutes to rack up kills. Aaron steps forward, looking incredibly imposing as a powerful blue aura flares up around him. This immediately panics the crowd, since they're barely level 5 and Aaron is a terrifying level 75 powerhouse. But Aaron reassures them, promising to lock all the summons at level 1 and stop the test if anyone gets overwhelmed. Hearing that, the students instantly cheer up, excited that they can finally go all out without any fear. Adrian turns back to Pluto with a smug grin, mocking him by saying a C-rank trash won't even manage a single kill. But Pluto doesn't back down, his eyes glowing with a sharp purple light as he challenges the bully to settle things right now. Adrian eagerly accepts, proposing a bet on who ranks higher in the upcoming test. He bursts out laughing, completely losing his mind at the thought of comparing their ranks. Getting right in Pluto's face, he asks if the boy still thinks he's a genius and demands he set the penalty for the loser. Declaring he'll wipe that smug look off his face forever, Adrian proposes the loser crawl and bark like a dog, a condition Pluto calmly accepts. With the stakes set, the first day of the rookie professional test at Aurora Academy officially begins. Over the speakers, an announcement orders all the students to head straight to their designated test rooms. Principal Julian Kingsley informs Elder Aaron that everyone is in position and the teleport arrays are ready to go. That is when Aaron Crowley, the level 75 Bronze Shaper and Azure Dragon Guild Vice Chairman, powers up his massive magic circle. The magic circle flashes, instantly teleporting Pluto and the other students into their respective arenas. Looking around, Pluto spots a group of glowing green bronze soldiers materializing right in front of him. Instead of backing down, he summons his own skeleton soldiers to see how they stack up against the Academy's constructs. The glowing bronze soldiers immediately charge forward, with their spears raised to attack. Pluto's skeletons rush into battle, swinging their massive weapons with terrifying force. With a single powerful clash, his undead warriors easily smash the bronze constructs into tiny pieces. Standing over the rubble, Pluto realizes these guys crumble easily, though they would have been a real pain if his summon limit were still active. Watching the trial closely, Aaron is surprised to see the 5 bronze soldiers cleared so quickly, prompting him to turn up the heat and increase the numbers. Down in the arena, Pluto notices a fresh wave of enemies spawning right in front of him, but he remains completely unbothered, figuring that even with this crowd, 5 of his skeletons are more than enough to handle them. He calculates that pitting one of his skeletons against 2 bronze soldiers is the perfect ratio to keep the fight fast and under control. Up in the observation room, Aaron is stunned to see 10 bronze soldiers get wiped out in the blink of an eye. This gets the principal's attention, who proudly points out they've got some real talent this year, leaving the other staff amazed that anyone could actually impress the legendary elder. Eager to see who this mystery prodigy is, Julian demands to pull up the leaderboard immediately. But when the screen loads, his jaw drops as he realizes the top spot belongs to Pluto. To make things even wilder, one of the staff points out that Pluto's score is climbing higher by the second. It quickly shoots past 20, leaving Julian completely speechless while his colleague smugly asks if he finally believes her now. The principal clutches his face in disbelief, wondering if Pluto's insane score of 200 talent points let him break right through his class limits. Beside him, Aaron is just as shocked, remembering that he only had 99 talent points when he was the city's top scorer, making him realize this kid is a true diamond in the rough. Eager to see what the boy can really do, the elder decides to give him a proper push by ramping up the difficulty. Meanwhile, Pluto just strolls through the arena, thinking 10 bronze soldiers are absolutely no threat compared to what he faced back at Giant Rhino Mountain. Suddenly, he hears a sharp rush of wind and turns around to investigate. He is taken aback as a massive horde of armored enemies suddenly materializes right before his eyes. Looking at their sheer numbers, he can feel the heavy pressure of their overwhelming energy. The sheer scale of the enemy force is absolutely mind-blowing, but he just grins, realizing it's a perfect matchup for a numbers game. Summoning his own massive army of dark, glowing skeletons, he prepares to find out whose forces are truly superior. Inside Adrian's test room, the arrogant student is pushing himself to the limit. He boasts about taking down at least a dozen bronze soldiers, confident that Pluto will never catch up to him. This rivalry goes back 2 years to their talent assessment, where Adrian scored an impressive 77 points, guaranteeing him an A rank. But his moment of glory was instantly shattered when the announcer revealed that Pluto scored a mind-blowing 200 points. Meanwhile, Pluto stood there calmly as the rest of the class turned to look at him in awe. One of the girls claps in excitement, pointing out that a score of 200 puts him at the very top of the entire country. Even their instructor acknowledges Pluto's insane talent, but tells the other elite students that they need to keep pace with him. Hearing that absolutely infuriates Adrian, who can't believe he's being told to keep up with someone else. He reminds himself that he's the second heir of the prestigious Blackwood family, and only his own brother has ever been better than him. So there's absolutely no way he's going to let himself be compared to some broke orphan. Back in the present, Adrian slams his weapon down in frustration, channeling all that old anger into his training. He grins maniacally, claiming his Berserker Knight class will easily crush a pathetic necromancer and make Pluto crawl like a dog. But despite his loud laughter and big talk, the test screen reveals he only has a measly 15 points. Meanwhile, Pluto's summoned skeleton effortlessly slices through the enemies, putting his score at a massive 79 points. Suddenly, one of the massive bronze soldiers swings its giant axe down with incredible force, but he completely shatters the enemy, instantly racking up 100 points on the scoreboard. Standing among the rubble, he counts his remaining skeleton soldiers and accepts that casualties are inevitable against such a massive horde. He realizes he can't let up and needs to summon more allies before the next wave drops. However, his mana is already half gone, leaving him wondering why the monster spawns suddenly spiked so much. Outside the arena, Julian Kingsley and his colleague are absolutely stunned to see a C-Rank Necromancer shattering the Academy's historical record. Even Crowley is amazed that the boy wiped out 100 bronze soldiers, which is basically like fighting a silver difficulty boss. The old man grips his cane as blue energy flares up, jokingly wondering if the kid is trying to make him look bad. Suddenly, a massive pillar of light erupts from him, prompting a worried Julian to call out to the elder. Crowley suddenly realizes something is terribly wrong, while Julian rushes over to ask if the trial's summons drained too much of his mana. The elder scoffs that he could summon 10,000 soldiers easily, leaving Julian completely confused about what is actually bad. Crowley asks who the top scorer is, admitting he got carried away and sent way too many monsters into that specific room. He warns that the student inside might be in serious danger. Back in the trial, Pluto can only smile wryly at the examiner's extreme overkill. Looking at the endless sea of enemies surrounding him, he wonders what he could have possibly done to offend the old man. To survive this, he decides it is time to stop holding back and bring out his big guns against them. With a snap of his fingers, he activates his explosive gunpowder skeleton skill. Immediately, a horde of skeletons carrying burning barrels appears as he commands them to blow the enemies to dust. Meanwhile, in the control room, Julian Kingsley panics and begs Crowley to dispel the bronze soldiers before Pluto gets hurt. As they watch, a woman in the room stares at the screen in shock as the battle unfolds. Suddenly, she yells for them to wait and hold on. But Julian Kingsley argues that waiting even one more minute could get Pluto torn apart. To stop him, she reaches out her hand and points toward the monitor. Instead of a disaster, Pluto's score rapidly climbs past 200 points. Then the points keep ticking up, quickly reaching nearly 300. The score keeps climbing rapidly, finally stopping at 350 points. Seeing this, Julian Kingsley can't believe his eyes, while Crowley realizes this kid could save their nation one day. Even so, Julian Kingsley still worries Pluto is pushing himself too hard, but Crowley wants to see the kid's absolute limits. Right then, a massive explosion rocks the arena, and Pluto's score suddenly skyrockets to a whopping 800 points. The explosive army keeps blowing things up, pushing his score all the way to 900 points. Through the smoke, he spots a few bronze soldiers still standing, and is surprised they actually survived the blast. Without wasting any time, he orders his summons to charge in and wipe them out. Looking around at the absolute wreckage, Pluto wonders if he went a bit too far as his score hits a perfect 1,000. Up in the observation room, Julian and the others notice the simulation has suddenly come to a halt. Crowley can't believe his eyes, realizing the kid just wiped out every single bronze soldier he summoned. While the examiners stand there in shock, Julian asks if he should bring the boy over, but Crowley refuses. Instead, the old man decides he's going to meet this incredible rookie in person. Julian Kingsley tries to stop Crowley, warning him that the test isn't over yet and asking what will happen to the other students if he runs off to Pluto's room. But Crowley dismisses the concern, explaining that his teleportation magic won't affect the bronze soldiers in the other rooms as long as he stays within the city. He realizes that if this kid's insane score is actually real, his potential is absolutely off the charts. Determined to see for himself, he teleports away in a flash of light, eager to meet the young genius immediately. Meanwhile, back in the trial room, Pluto finally catches his breath after clearing out the massive horde of enemies. He looks around at the wreckage, knowing that taking down over 100 bronze soldiers would have been a total nightmare without his explosive gunpowder skeletons. Suddenly, another magic circle starts glowing on the floor, making him wonder if yet another wave of monsters is on the way. But as the light intensifies, he notices that only a single silhouette is emerging this time. Sensing a threat, Pluto's skeleton soldiers immediately spring into action, charging forward to surround the intruder. The newcomer turns out to be Crowley, who quickly shouts for them to stop as sharp blades halt inches from his face. He stares at the undead warriors in surprise, recognizing them as necromantic soldiers. Pluto is shocked to see the legendary elder standing right there, and asks what could have possibly brought him to his trial room. Crowley points out that, as far as he knows, only C-Rank Necromancers are capable of summoning these kinds of undead soldiers. When Pluto confirms that's indeed his class, the elder brings up a major catch, reminding him that necromancers are supposed to have a strict limit of just one summon every 30 minutes. He breaks into a sweat, realizing the test itself has only been running for 30 minutes, and struggles to think of a plausible explanation. Before he can come up with an excuse, the elder looks down sternly, demanding to know how he managed to summon such an army in that short window. Panicking internally, the young man realizes he is completely cornered and debates whether he should just tell the truth. But Crowley tells him there's no need for excuses, asking only if he can control this power to protect the nation. Remembering his second chance at life, Pluto knows he needs the vice chairman's approval to achieve his goal. Deciding to show just enough of his hand, Pluto summons a dark, flaming scythe and begins to explain his ability. He explains that normal necromancers face a 30-minute cooldown and can only summon one soldier at a time. On top of that, those standard summons only last for a maximum of 1 hour. But with a confident smirk, Pluto reveals that none of those restrictions apply to his own summons. Crowley's eyes widen in sheer disbelief at the concept of completely unrestricted necromancy. The old man closes his eyes for a moment, letting the gravity of this revelation sink in. He asks if this means Pluto can single-handedly command a tireless, supply-free legion, which Pluto calmly confirms. Staring at the young man, Crowley realizes Pluto is on a completely different level than any rookie he's ever seen. Blown away by this unbelievable talent, the elder decides they must invest everything they have into him, regardless of how he obtains such power, and resolves to meet with the chairman immediately after the test to secure his future. As he teleports away with a promise to return tomorrow, the nearby examiner is left completely starstruck, stammering at the mere mention of the Azure Dragon Guild's chairman. The young man is left standing alone, momentarily wondering if there was some kind of glitch in the teleportation. But before he fully disappears, Crowley reaches back out to hand him a special gift from the guild. Pluto looks down at the golden key, completely stunned by what he's seeing. Crowley asks him if he's ever heard of a blessing rift. Pluto remembers reading about it in class, knowing it's a special dungeon that scales to your level, with random monsters, insane experience, and incredible drop rates, and incredible treasures. But getting in is almost impossible since you need a rare blessing key, which only has a tiny 0.1% drop rate in normal dungeons. Pluto looks at the key, realizing what Crowley is actually giving him. Crowley places the legendary key right into Pluto's hand. A system notification confirms it's indeed a blessing key, which can open a blessing rift once. The teleportation light finally fades, leaving Pluto alone in the room. Holding the key, Pluto gets fired up, deciding he's going to tackle this rift the second his test is over. Meanwhile, up on the observation deck, Principal Julian Kingsley announces that the 30 minutes have officially run out, bringing the test to an end. Down in his own arena, Adrian Blackwood collapses onto his sword, completely exhausted, but relieved that the grueling ordeal is finally over. Catching his breath amidst the wreckage, he stares at the massive pile of defeated soldiers scattered across the floor. Even though he is beaten up, he smirks, boasting that he took down around 40 of them and is aiming to beat Pluto for the top spot in the entire school. Just then, a loudspeaker orders everyone to exit their rooms and gather on the playground to see the final results. A massive crowd of students gathers outside the academy, buzzing with energy after the grueling trial. The students complain about how brutal the level 1 bronze soldiers were, comparing their low scores in frustration. Meanwhile, Adrian looks around the crowd in his red armor, wondering if Pluto got scared and fled. Suddenly, one of the students spots Pluto standing calmly in the distance. Adrian immediately rushes over and grabs Pluto by the collar, mocking him for having the nerve to show his face. Pluto stays completely calm, quietly holding onto the key Crowley gave him. Adrian sneers right in his face, asking if he is ready to bark like a dog in front of the entire school. He adds with a twisted grin that he cannot wait to watch him crawl around on all fours. Before things can escalate, Principal Julian Kingsley calls for order to announce the official rookie test results. He explains that he will only read off the top 5 scores, leaving everyone else to check with their teachers. The announcer kicks off with 5th place, Tristan Ashcroft, who scored 39 points, shocking the crowd at how high the bar is. Adrian smugly whispers that he scored even higher, while Pluto worries his own perfect score might be a bit too flashy, just as Adrian is announced in 4th place with 41 points. Hearing his name, Adrian gloats that it is time for Pluto to get down and bark, but Pluto calmly tells him the list is not finished yet. Adrian laughs off the idea of a mere necromancer, making the top 3 right before the announcer names Luna Viramont in 3rd place with 77 points. She celebrates her high score, leaving the other students completely shocked that a support-type purification saint could perform so well. Meanwhile, the 2nd place spot goes to Colin Lancaster with 95 points, leaving the combat S rank furious and demanding to know who beat him. The principal takes a deep, tense breath before making the final announcement. Principal Julian Kingsley then reveals that Pluto took 1st place with an unbelievable score of 1,000 points. The crowd of students erupts in absolute disbelief, unable to comprehend how anyone could shatter the academy record so completely. They whisper about Pluto's C-Rank status, while Luna stands stunned and Colin realizes Pluto had to maintain an insane kill rate to achieve that score. Adrian stands frozen in sheer terror, sweat dripping down his face as the reality of the situation sinks in. He trembles in denial, but Pluto steps up right behind him to coldly remind him that he just lost their bet. Adrian backs away in a panic, desperately accusing Pluto of cheating, but Pluto calmly asks if he is trying to back out now. Nearby students eagerly gossip about their high-stakes bet, thrilled at the prospect of watching the arrogant bully humiliate himself in front of everyone. He falls flat on his back, screaming that there's no way a C-Rank Necromancer could ever get a score like that. But the other students just laugh at him, telling him not to be such a sore loser since a bet is a bet. Up on the stage, the announcer declares that the top scorer will receive epic quality gear from the prestigious Azure Dragon Guild. As Pluto is called up, he walks right past his defeated rival, coldly telling him he won't waste his breath on trash. While the crowd whispers that Pluto is being way too nice, Adrian screams from the dirt, swearing he'll surpass him. Losing his mind with rage, Adrian screams that he's going to make Pluto suffer 100 times worse and kill him. That threat actually makes Pluto stop in his tracks, casting a dark look back at the screaming bully. Suddenly, a massive, terrifying skeletal aura rises up behind Pluto, radiating pure pressure. The sheer force of that energy hits Adrian like a physical blow, knocking him back as he screams in terror. With his point clearly made, Pluto turns back around and calmly walks away without saying another word. He heads up the stairs toward the stage, while the rest of the students watch him in absolute silence. Once he reaches the top, Principal Julian Kingsley pats him on the shoulder and congratulates him on his incredible performance. Julian then explains that the guild has prepared 3 different high-tier gear options for his first-place prize. Since Pluto's official class is still technically undetermined, Julian tells him he can choose whichever one he wants. Pluto looks over the floating holographic options, carefully analyzing what's on display. But he quickly realizes that the heavy armor and the longsword are meant for tanks and warriors, making them totally useless for him. Left with only one viable option, he chooses the epic-grade Moonveil robe. He is thrilled to find that its extra mana allows him to summon 50 more soldiers, just as the announcer crowns him the champion of the rookie test. Instantly, the entire crowd of students starts chanting his name in absolute awe. Then, the principal steps up to remind everyone that while this test is over, the guild trials are only a month away, so they need to keep grinding. Later on, Pluto heads back to his rundown apartment in the slums to prepare for his next move. Standing alone in his room, he pulls out the golden blessing key that Elder Crowley gave him. He recalls his textbook instructions and begins channeling his mana directly into the key. Suddenly, dark purple energy sparks from the key as a mysterious rift begins to tear open. As the portal expands, he notes that this incredible key can open a rift absolutely anywhere. He remembers Elder Crowley advising him to find a reliable healer for backup, but he silently apologizes to the old man. With a determined look, Pluto steps right into the dark portal, firmly deciding that he prefers to go solo. A swirling blue portal suddenly bursts open with a bright flash of light. Stepping through, Pluto looks around and immediately spots something ahead. He recognizes them as level 9 blade-tail leopards, noting they have terrible defense but crazy speed and brutal attack angles, meaning he has to stay sharp. Since they're so fast, he decides the best strategy is to keep them from getting anywhere near him. He slams his staff down to summon his necromantic soldiers, ordering them to form a tight perimeter so absolutely nothing can get through. The leopards charge with a roar, but his skeletons easily strike them down, instantly earning him 300 experience points. Pluto is amazed by how much experience even these basic monsters give in this level 9 Blessing Rift, realizing he'll level up before even reaching the boss. Having cleared the entrance monsters, he decides it's time to push deeper into the rift. As his summons rack up more kills, he realizes having most of his soldiers tied up guarding him is a waste of firepower, meaning he needs to fix his survivability issues soon. After taking down another leopard, a bright light envelops him as he finally levels up to 10, thrilled to have reached double digits. With this milestone, he unlocks a brand new skill called Death Glare. This ability summons a massive, creepy eye that completely paralyzes anyone who looks at it with pure terror. While he realizes this crowd control is incredibly broken, its 24-hour cooldown makes it a situational one-shot. But since he has restriction removal, he can bypass that cooldown and spam this terrifying skill forever. Suddenly, a massive boss monster called the Blade-Tail Leopard King leaps out to attack. Surprised to see the boss so soon, Pluto immediately orders his skeleton soldiers to surround and destroy it. However, the beast easily slices through his front line with its razor-sharp tail. He watches in shock as the boss moves way too fast, tearing through his defense before they can even form a circle. If this keeps up, his entire army will get wiped out before they can even land a single hit. Realizing the danger, the young man decides it's time to get serious and readies his weapon. A massive surge of dark red energy begins to swirl around him as he prepares a powerful spell. Moments later, he summons a giant glowing red eye in the sky to test out his new skill, the Eye of the Dead. With the massive eye hovering above, he calls out directly to the Blade-Tail King to draw its attention. The beast roars furiously as the dark red energy begins to wrap around its body. Pluto just smirks, completely unfazed by the monster's aggressive display. He activates his Death Glare skill, unleashing terrifying skull illusions that inflict the fear status on the roaring beast. Since the monster's level is lower than his, he calculates the fear will only last 5 seconds, so he immediately prepares to summon his gunpowder skeletons. With a simple command, Pluto sends them in, triggering a massive chain of explosions right on the beast. A man in black watches his army of skeletons carry flaming barrels forward. The massive beast roars in fury as flames erupt all around it. With the fear effect finally wearing off, it charges back into the fray. But its target is ready, instantly activating a restriction removal skill called Death Glare. A massive, glowing red eye opens in the darkness, triggering a series of devastating explosions. The beast gets completely blasted, and Pluto is shocked by the massive amount of experience he receives. He realizes it's absolutely impossible to gain 2 whole levels from a single run in normal dungeons. Even so, he knows leveling up isn't his main priority compared to the new skill he unlocked. A system notification pops up to confirm that his next restriction has indeed been lifted. It reveals the physical form lock is gone, allowing him to temporarily transform into a bodiless nether form. Realizing this makes him completely immune to all damage, he calls it the ultimate survival skill. A system notification pops up, explaining that the physical form lock is removed, allowing Pluto to temporarily transform into a bodiless nether form that ignores all damage, though it drains his mana fast. He realizes that because of this rapid mana drain, he needs to focus on stacking way more MP to keep the form active. Suddenly, something catches his eye, making him freeze in surprise. A massive splash of golden light erupts in front of him, and he wonders if he just scored a legendary drop already. Meanwhile, far away from the dungeon, the scene shifts to a massive, luxurious mansion. Inside, Adrian Blackwood sits on a plush red couch, seething with rage as he mutters Pluto's name. He still can't shake the memory of that terrifying dark look in Pluto's eyes from their confrontation. He remembers how completely humiliated he was in front of the entire academy. In a fit of pure rage, he squeezes his hand shut, shattering his wineglass into bloody pieces. A worried servant rushes over to ask if his hand is okay, but Adrian just snaps at him to clean up the mess immediately because a guest is arriving. He bites his fist, swearing that Pluto is going to pay dearly for crossing him. Just then, his butler enters the room to announce that his guest has finally arrived. Adrian barks at the cleaning servant to get out, prompting a quick apology as the man scrambles away. He then instructs the butler to show the visitor in and leave them alone. A mysterious figure steps into the room, carrying a glowing ornate blue bow on their back. Watching from the side, the younger servants whisper among themselves, wondering how their young master got mixed up with someone who looks like pure trouble. The head butler seriously warns them that calling this guy bad news is a massive understatement. This lethal visitor is a legendary hitman with 33 successful contracts, renowned for sniping targets from miles away. Cedric immediately lays down his rules, warning that his rate doubles for women and children, though Adrian quickly reassures him that the target is male. Stunned by the assassin's sharp intuition, Adrian asks how he could possibly know so much. Cedric just gives a smug grin, pointing out that it's obvious because Adrian is a professional himself. He notes that since Adrian is an A rank who's struggling enough to hire help, he wonders if this mysterious target is actually an S rank. Adrian looks incredibly tense as he admits that's not the case, revealing the target is actually just a necromancer. Cedric is completely dumbfounded, asking if he means that trash class that takes half an hour just to summon a single weak skeleton. With sweat dripping down his face, Adrian can only awkwardly confirm that's exactly who he's talking about. The hitman just stares at him for a second before starting to chuckle quietly to himself. He completely loses it and bursts into hysterical laughter, mocking the A-rank berserker for getting wrecked by a C-rank trash class, though Adrian desperately explains that Pluto is the Azure Dragon Guild's top prospect, which suddenly makes Cedric freeze. Adrian watches him nervously, waiting to see what the hitman is going to say next. Cedric gets right in his face and delivers the punchline, telling him that this means the price is going way up. Adrian lets out a sigh of relief, assuring him that money is absolutely not an issue. He explains that he only needs to provide a photo and some basic info to find the target, but the creepy archer cuts him off, promising to straight up kill Pluto. Smiling maliciously, Adrian boasts that he can offer far more than just the basics, since he is Pluto's classmate and knows exactly where he lives. Hearing this, the assassin walks away, muttering that having the exact address makes the job a whole lot easier. Adrian warns him not to screw this up, because if Pluto survives or the Azure Dragon Guild finds out, they'll both be in deep trouble, which immediately prompts a dark, threatening glare from the hunter. Terrified by the sudden pressure, Adrian quickly backs down, stammering that he was just giving him a friendly reminder. The archer scoffs as he leaves, snapping that he doesn't need reminders from a piece of trash who couldn't even handle a C-rank weakling. Left standing there in a cold sweat, Adrian seethes with rage, absolutely hating that he's being looked down on yet again. He slumps onto a nearby sofa to cool off, trying to brush off the humiliation. Clutching his face in pure madness, he screams Pluto's name, declaring that he doesn't care how it happens as long as his rival ends up dead. Meanwhile, back in a quiet room, a dark spatial rift tears open and drops a glowing legendary dagger. Pluto catches the weapon and examines its stats, noting that while it's legendary assassin gear and useless for a caster like him, it'll still fetch a fortune on the market. He smiles, realizing this blessing rift just netted him 2 whole levels along with 2 god-tier skills, making him feel incredibly grateful to Elder Crowley for the key. Deciding it's time to head back and rest up, he prepares to leave, keeping in mind his important meeting with the Elder tomorrow. With a sudden swoosh, he vanishes into a massive swirl of dark, crackling energy, leaving the rift behind. Stepping back into the academy, he grumbles that the place is nothing but a cramped cage compared to the vastness of the rift. But he doesn't get even a second to relax before a glowing blue energy spear crashes right through the window. The projectile pierces straight through his chest, sending him crashing to the floor as his assassin, a mysterious archer with glowing blue eyes, declares the target eliminated. Inside the Azure Dragon Guild headquarters, the guild's chairman sits at his desk, completely stunned to hear about someone having 200 talent points. Crowley confirms it, reminding the chairman that he became a legend with just 120 points, meaning this kid's potential is off the charts. The chairman looks out the window, realizing that if they train him right, this kid could completely change the game for the entire nation. Turning back with a serious look, he asks what class the kid actually is. Crowley looks him dead in the eye and reveals that the kid is a necromancer. A heavy silence fills the room as the chairman processes this disappointing news. He points out that class tiers usually set a hard limit on potential, and a C-rank class is incredibly restricted. But Crowley counters that this is exactly the point. This kid completely shattered those class limits. Crowley's eyes glow with intense focus as he prepares to drop an even bigger bombshell. He reveals that the kid achieved unrestricted summoning, leaving the chairman completely speechless at the thought of a solo player commanding a whole undead army. The chairman asks if they've ruled out legendary gear or one-time items, but Crowley assures him the kid was only using a basic, mundane staff. Realizing they are dealing with a true system-breaking monster, The chairman slams his fist down and demands to meet him immediately. He urgently demands to know where the kid is right now. Crowley explains that he gave him a blessing key, meaning he's likely challenging a blessing rift at this very moment. The chairman panics because they won't be able to reach him if things go south. But Crowley reassures him that he warned the kid to bring a support class along. He figures that with the boy's insane power, even a basic healer as backup would be enough to keep him completely safe. Meanwhile, the chairman realizes that an unlimited necromancer like him might be their nation's only hope of surviving the upcoming war. But out in the city, a glowing blue energy arrow suddenly streaks through the narrow streets. It shatters right through a window, heading straight for its target inside. The projectile strikes Pluto right in the back, piercing straight through his chest. Up on a nearby rooftop, the assassin Cedric boasts about eliminating his target. Though he's disappointed he missed out on stealing a blessing key. He grins, deciding to stick around and enjoy the show. He figures he'll just wait until Pluto's teammates crawl out of the rift and find the corpse. But then, the dark rift crackles and completely vanishes into thin air. Cedric stares in shock, realizing the rift is closed but absolutely nobody has walked out. He can't believe his eyes as he realizes the kid actually entered the high-level rift completely solo and survived. Down on the floor, Pluto catches his breath, muttering that it was an incredibly close call. He realizes that if he hadn't activated his newly unlocked nether form to phase through the attack, he'd be a dead man right now. He is absolutely furious about getting shot in the back the second he stepped out of the rift, while his assassin, Cedric, panics in sheer disbelief, positive the arrow hit its mark. Trapped under a terrifying gaze, the sniper realizes he is completely paralyzed and unable to move a muscle. He forces himself to calm down, reasoning that they are miles apart, so his target cannot possibly maintain this control while closing the distance. He tells himself that all he has to do is outlast the paralysis, and then he'll have plenty of ways to finish the job. Meanwhile, Pluto admits he was actually planning to play dead to lure the sniper in, but didn't expect him to be so cautious. Luckily, Pluto always has a backup plan, and a skeleton soldier suddenly summons right behind the unsuspecting assassin. Cedric is completely blindsided, wondering how on earth a summon could have gotten to his position so quickly. Before he can react, the skeleton drives its sword straight into his back. The sudden pain breaks the spell, and a system notification alerts him that the fear effect is finally lifted. As his fear lifts, Cedric explodes into motion, and a nearby skeleton shatters from his attack. He boasts about his high level and defense, confident that a single weak summon can't stop him from turning Pluto into a pincushion. But his smugness instantly vanishes when Pluto activates Death Glare once again, trapping him in the terrifying gaze all over again. Cedric stands on the rooftop, confidently reasoning that since necromancers take 30 minutes to summon a single skeleton, he's guaranteed to win unless his target can somehow lock him down for that long. But down below, Pluto realizes the assassin is at least 5 levels above him and a single soldier won't do much, so he brings out his endless supply and summons his entire necromantic army. Seeing this, Cedric panics at the sight of dozens of skeletons, realizing Adrian lied to him about this being mere C-rank power, while Pluto calmly orders his massive army to move out. Following his command, a horde of skeleton soldiers climbs rapidly up the side of the skyscraper, scaling the walls to reach the assassin. As they climb, the relentless skeletons shatter the glass and swarm onto the upper levels, closing in on their target. Moments later, the undead soldiers leap onto the rooftop, completely surrounding the terrified assassin. A skeleton warrior lunges down with a massive axe, and Cedric raises his glowing bow to block. Meanwhile, Pluto looks up at the massive building from below, wishing that necromancers had some kind of flight skill to make things easier. Back on the roof, a completely cornered Cedric begs for his life, desperately offering to negotiate and pleading to see Pluto's master. Looking down at the cornered assassin, he asks if the man really thinks he can be of any use. As his skeleton soldiers close in, he tells the hitman he is curious and wants to be enlightened. Desperate to survive, the hitman begs for mercy, offering to reveal his employer's identity in exchange for his life. The young man calmly says the name Adrian Blackwood, explaining he already knows and will settle that score himself, leaving the hitman shocked and desperately offering to kill 3 people for free just to be spared. But the young man coldly reminds him that as a professional killer, he should always be ready to die. Looking down with glowing purple eyes, the young man admits the assassin is indeed useful to him, but there's a catch. He reveals that the hitman will only be useful to him after he's dead. With a cold glare, the young man commands his summons to finish him off. The assassin screams and begs for mercy, promising to do absolutely anything if they just don't kill him. But his pleas are cut short as a skeleton soldier strikes him down, leaving blood splattered across the young man's face. The assassin's lifeless body collapses onto the ground right in front of the young man. Exhausted from the intense battle, the young man drops to his knees, leaning on his weapon for support. He lets out a sigh of relief, glad that the fight is finally over. He calculates his remaining mana, noting that keeping his nether form active for just a second cost him 30 mana points, and his repeated death glares and summons have completely drained him. He realizes it was a good thing his skeleton soldiers have a 16-foot summon range, allowing him to instantly summon one outside the door, while using his nether form to dodge that arrow. It was this strategic range that allowed him to order his summon to locate and ambush the deadly sniper. While that was happening, he had acted as bait to keep the assassin's eyes locked onto him, but pulling off such a stunt completely drained his mana, leaving him feeling utterly hollowed out. Standing over the fallen sniper, he admits the guy's ability to land precise shots from miles away was actually terrifying. Now he prepares to use a new skill, hoping it won't completely dry up his remaining mana. As he activates it, a system notification reveals he can make a skeleton absorb a defeated enemy's soul to trigger an evolution. Moments later, he holds the assassin's glowing purple soul right in the palm of his hand. Next, he injects the soul directly into his skeleton soldier to unlock its evolution. The transformation is a massive success, turning his basic summon into an A-rank Hex-Eye marksman with insane long-range abilities. The system screen pops up, showing the stats of Pluto's new A-rank Hex-Eye marksman, who boasts some seriously overpowered long-range skills. Pluto is impressed, realizing this guy has a massive visual range and will level up right alongside him. But then a red warning screen flashes, saying the evolution is incomplete and the soldier can't fight yet. Pluto stares at his new summon, wondering what on earth could be missing to finish the process. He puts a hand to his chin, trying to figure out what piece of the puzzle he's overlooked. Suddenly, a thought strikes him as he looks down. He remembers the glowing blue bow floating in the air and wonders if a weapon is the key. He picks up the glowing bow, recognizing it as the epic-grade weapon left behind by the assassin he just killed. Pluto smirks, thinking a simple mana boost is a bit boring, but it'll have to do. He hands the glowing bow over to the skeleton, hoping this is exactly what the system is asking for. The moment the skeleton takes it, a massive surge of dark energy erupts, confirming the evolution is finally complete. Pluto nods, realizing it makes perfect sense that a marksman actually needs a weapon to fight. He tells the soldier to use this bow for now, promising to get him a much better upgrade later on. The skeleton bows his head, declaring his absolute loyalty to his master. Pluto's eyes go wide in shock when he realizes his newly evolved soldier can actually talk. The skeleton calmly confirms it, looking right back at him with his glowing blue eyes. Kneeling down, the marksman asks his master for a single favor, and Pluto is more than curious to hear what it is. He requests that his master grant him a proper name. Hearing this, Pluto pauses, pondering the idea of giving his summon a real name. He reasons that calling him Hex-Eye Marksman all the time is definitely going to get clumsy. Since this is his very first evolved soldier, he decides it deserves some serious thought. Looking down at his loyal summon, he starts drifting back into his memories. Suddenly, his mind flashes back to his previous life, showing a ruined city skyline. In that past life, a skilled sniper sits among the rubble, carefully prepping his rifle. A younger Pluto, acting as a rookie soldier, doubts if a single sniper rifle can actually take down the enemy commander. But another soldier nearby scoffs, asking the rookie if he even knows who he is talking to. He explains that this guy is a total legend who once took out an enemy commander from 4 miles away, and that his enemies call him the Distant Reaper, a title that strikes absolute fear into anyone who hears it. Through his scope, a sniper targets a man in a suit and his soldiers. Down there, the ruthless enemy commander screams at his men to stab the corpses and show absolutely no mercy to anyone in this nation. With a steady hand, the sniper pulls the trigger, unleashing a devastating shot that tears through the city streets. Before anyone can even react, the bullet finds its mark, instantly taking out the screaming commander. The remaining enemy soldiers panic, screaming for everyone to take cover and get down. Watching from afar, the young soldier is completely blown away by the shot from over 2 miles out, calling it absolutely incredible. He cannot take his eyes off the shooter, staring in absolute awe at such legendary skill. Excitedly, he asks the man for his name and begs him to teach him how to shoot like that. The sniper, known as the Distant Reaper, casually rests his rifle on his shoulder and introduces himself as Archer, asking if the kid is just a rookie. Back in the present, Pluto smiles as he remembers that fateful encounter with his old comrade. He officially bestows the name Archer upon his newly evolved skeletal soldier, who kneels and gladly accepts it. With the naming ceremony complete, Pluto commands his new marksman to return to his shadow. A system notification pops up, showing that he has used up one of his 5 evolution slots. Pluto realizes he only has 5 slots in total, meaning every single choice has to be carefully planned for maximum potential. He's incredibly relieved he didn't waste these precious slots on weak dungeon monsters, since that would have been a total disaster. Suddenly, a glowing magic circle appears on the ground, making Pluto wonder if yet another assassin is coming for him. But it turns out to be Elder Crowley, who was sent by the chairman to check on him, only to freeze in shock at the pile of defeated enemies. The scene opens on a quiet city skyline under the dark night sky. Crowley is shocked to hear that Pluto got ambushed the second he stepped out of the Blessing Rift. Pluto secretly breathes a sigh of relief, knowing his secret ability would have been exposed if he'd been a second slower recalling Archer. Crowley then asks about his teammate's status, leaving Pluto stammering for an excuse. Crowley glares at him with a stern, knowing look. He quickly realizes that Pluto completely ignored his warning and went into the rift completely solo. He lectures Pluto about how devastating his death would be for the guild and the nation, but Pluto confidently brushes it off, saying equal-level dungeons are zero trouble for him. Watching him, Crowley can't help but think this reckless arrogance is the exact spitting image of the chairman in his youth. Changing the subject, Pluto asks why the Elder is paying him a midnight visit instead of waiting for their scheduled morning meeting. Crowley explains that the chairman deemed the situation critical and ordered an immediate escort to headquarters, catching Pluto completely off guard. As the Elder urges him to move because the chairman is waiting, Pluto gestures back to the bloody mess left on the rooftop. Crowley assures him that the guild's intelligence and logistics teams will handle the cleanup and run a full background check on the attackers. The two of them head down and walk outside the building together. Looking around, Pluto asks why they aren't using a teleportation array to get there faster. Crowley explains that he isn't a space-type class and can't just summon teleportation arrays, though Pluto points out he used them at the academy and just moments ago. The Elder clarifies those were pre-made portals he only had access to activate, leading Pluto to wonder if there's an array hidden in this building as well. With a sharp look, Crowley reveals that he actually had a teleportation array etched directly onto Pluto's own nightshade robe. He is shocked to find a glowing purple magic circle suddenly appearing on his back. But the Elder tells him to relax, explaining it's just a disposable one-time tracking array that's already fading away. Sure enough, the glowing emblem dissolves into thin air with a soft hiss. Just then, a sleek black limousine pulls up right in front of them on the street. 2 guild staff members in green tracksuits bow respectfully, and Crowley immediately orders them to clean up the assassin's corpse on the roof. He also demands they get him a full report on the killer's identity as soon as possible. The staff member quickly agrees, while Pluto notes to himself that these guys must be the guild's non-combat support staff. Crowley then urges him to get inside the car so they don't keep the guild's chairman waiting. With that, the luxury car speeds off into the night, leaving the 2 workers behind. One of the workers watches them go, incredibly jealous that the vice chairman is personally escorting a mere student to see the chairman. But his partner reveals that he secretly ran a class scan on the kid just now. While the first worker expects him to be some hidden S-rank prodigy, the scanner actually showed he's just a C-Rank Necromancer. The first worker is completely shocked, pointing out that even their guild's logistics department requires a B-rank minimum. This leads the scanner guy to believe there's only one explanation. The kid detected his scan and forged his class info instantly. His partner finds that hard to believe, since even veteran S-rank hunters usually fail to notice his stealthy detection scans. Sweating nervously, the scanner guy realizes just how terrifying someone must be to instantly detect a scan and feed back fake data. Meanwhile, inside the limousine, Pluto mentally prepares himself to face the Azure Dragon chairman, the absolute pinnacle of the nation's strongest guild. Crowley tells him to focus, calm his mind, and get ready because they've finally arrived. They pull up to the massive, towering skyscraper that serves as the guild's main base. Looking up at the magnificent headquarters, the young man is completely blown away, but the Elder just tells him to follow. Soon they stand before a pair of giant heavy stone doors carved with a massive dragon emblem. As the doors rumble open, they step into a grand high-ceilinged hall where the guild's flag waves proudly. Right away, a guard greets Crowley, welcoming the vice chairman back to the headquarters. Crowley doesn't waste any time and demands to be taken straight to the chairman, which the guard quickly agrees to. The group starts walking down a long corridor, with the heavily armored guards leading the way. As they walk, Pluto checks out their escorts and realizes they're wearing standard A-rank paladin gear, meaning they're at least level 50. When they reach a certain point, one of the guards stops and tells Crowley that their ranks are too low to go any further, so they have to withdraw. Crowley simply thanks them for their help as the guards turn back. Standing before the final set of doors, Crowley turns to Pluto and tells him he'll have to open this last door himself. He realizes that even a level 50 paladin, who would be a top dog in any other guild, isn't allowed near this door. As he places his hand on the glowing surface with the elder beside him, the sheer scale of their power starts to sink in. Inside, the guild's chairman, Victor Langley, immediately brings up Cedric Thornhill, a highly wanted B-rank assassin known as the Distant Reaper. He notes that the assassin had over 30 successful hits with 0 failures, and was estimated to be around level 18. Pluto is impressed that the Azure Dragon Guild already managed to get a complete profile on the assassin. Victor explains that, excluding extreme cases, the theoretical limit for an S rank to defeat an A rank is usually just a 3-level gap. Yet Pluto, a mere C rank, somehow just wiped out a veteran assassin who was 7 levels higher than him. He points out that Cedric should have sniped Pluto before he could even summon his army, and demands to know exactly how much he's been hiding. Pluto suddenly tenses up, wondering if his mind is playing tricks on him as he senses something terrifying. It's pure, suffocating killing intent rolling off the chairman, completely filling the room. Adrian sits on his fancy sofa, waiting for updates, but his phone only plays an automated message saying the number he dialed is unavailable. He grits his teeth in pure frustration, because the assassin promised him it would only take 3 minutes. Yet a whole night has passed without a single word. Furious at the lack of response, he screams out, wondering what on earth Cedric is doing, and completely crushes his phone in his bare hand. Slumping back onto the couch, he realizes his brother was right all along about assassins being nothing but unreliable scum. With no other options left, he looks over at the spare phone on the side table and decides he has to make the call. He reaches out and grabs the white phone to finally get some real help. Once the call connects, his older brother answers, and Adrian immediately admits he's in deep trouble and needs his help. His brother demands to know who in the city would dare mess with their family, prompting Adrian to furiously rant about a dead man walking who humiliated him and made him bark like a dog. Hearing this shocking news, his brother yells out in disbelief, completely stunned by the disrespect. He tells Adrian to listen up, explaining that he's currently in the middle of a guild mission. Right on cue, a massive level 35 Frostland Bear King roars behind him, but the muscular warrior promises to handle Adrian's problem the second he finishes punching this beast out of his way. Standing his ground in the freezing, snowy wasteland, the muscular warrior prepares to face down the roaring beast. He catches his breath, looking exhausted after finally putting an end to the creature. Meanwhile, a completely different kind of tension is brewing over at the Azure Dragon Guild headquarters. Inside, the chairman corners Pluto, demanding to know exactly how much power he's been hiding. Instead of backing down, Pluto readies his weapon and blasts a surge of dark energy. He glares right back, telling the guild leader that it's absolutely none of his business. This completely sets off the chairman, who furiously snaps that Pluto is as good as dead. Pluto immediately counters by activating his death glare and summoning a horde of skeletal soldiers to block him. He knows he needs to break out of this sealed room first to actually have space to fight. He hopes his summons and the paralyzing glare can buy him just enough time to make his move. The dark energy washes over the chairman, momentarily wrapping him in shadows. He pauses for a split second as the fear effect tries to take hold of his mind. But he easily shatters the spell, in less than 1/100th of a second, calling it a fool's trick. The young necromancer is stunned to see that his death glare failed to make the man flinch even for a moment. He can only hope his summoned forces will be enough to slow this monster of a man down. But his skeleton soldiers are instantly pulverized by an overwhelming, crushing force. Refusing to back down, Pluto quickly summons another wave of necromantic soldiers to the field. He then activates a skill to convert one of them into a gunpowder skeleton. Pluto commands his explosive new summon to blow the entire place wide open. The shadowy opponent charges straight through the smoke, completely unfazed by the threat. A massive, fiery explosion erupts as the gunpowder skeleton detonates right in front of him. Seeing his opponent tank the blast, Pluto decides to take advantage of that reckless confidence. He summons a whole squad of gunpowder skeletons, telling his foe to tank them to his heart's content. Outside the office, the guards hear the massive racket and figure the chairman is testing a real badass. Listening to the thunderous blasts, the guards assume the kid must be a top-tier S-rank to warrant such a violent test from their leaders. Back inside, Pluto catches his breath, sweating heavily as he braces himself. He reasons that not even the guild's strongest leader could walk away completely unscathed after taking dozens of explosive blasts head-on. But as the dust clears, the chairman stands tall and imposing in his heavy armor, completely untouched by the blast. Pluto is absolutely shocked to see him completely uninjured after such a massive chain of explosions, while the chairman just casually wipes himself off with a smug grunt. Pluto decides that if dozens of summon aren't enough, he'll drown his opponent in hundreds of explosive skeletons. He unleashes a massive wave of purple, screaming skulls to overwhelm his foe. But the chairman easily grabs Pluto by the throat, demanding to know what other secrets he's hiding while Pluto struggles to breathe. The chairman glares intensely, shouting at him to spit out the truth. Pluto just grits his teeth, refusing to show any weakness even while being choked. Instead of begging for mercy, he wears a smug grin and boldly flips the chairman the bird. This completely catches the chairman off guard as Pluto suddenly slips away. The chairman starts coughing, clearly surprised by the young man's sheer audacity. But then a warm smile spreads across his face as he announces that Pluto has officially passed. This completely bewilders Pluto, who has absolutely no idea what kind of test he just took. Back in the meeting room, Pluto is completely dumbfounded to learn that the entire life-or-death battle was just a setup. Crowley calmly explains that he asked the chairman to go all out, since true desperation is the only way to reveal a warrior's real backbone. Pluto can only sigh, muttering that he never expected such a kind-looking old man to play so dirty. The chairman steps in, telling him not to blame the elder, since they can't afford to waste resources on geniuses who crumble under pressure. He admits he's incredibly impressed by Pluto's endless summons and his absolutely unyielding spirit. With the test finally over, he formally introduces himself as Victor Langley, the chairman of the Azure Dragon Guild. The young man is left completely stunned by the revelation. Quickly regaining his composure, he shakes the armored giant's hand and introduces himself. From his seat, Crowley watches the tense exchange unfold in silence. The chairman acknowledges that Pluto's character is solid, but says his actual strength still needs to be verified. Pluto is surprised and asks if he wants another round, but the chairman explains that their power gap is too wide for a direct fight to show anything useful. Hearing that, Pluto asks what kind of test he has in mind instead. The chairman proposes a level 15 dungeon called Goblin Cave, promising that if Pluto can solo clear it on Doomsday difficulty, the guild will give him maximum resources. Crowley breaks a sweat in the background, clearly shocked by the sheer absurdity of this test. Pluto stands there repeating the terms, realizing just how insane a solo Doomsday run is going to be. The chairman adds that even if he fails, he'll still get into the guild, just without any of that sweet special support. Looking completely unfazed, Pluto looks up and boldly accepts the mission. The chairman grins, liking his guts but warning him that his power better match that confidence. Walking out, Pluto recalls that Doomsday monsters are way stronger than gold tier ones, making a level 15 dungeon pretty tricky for him. Still, he clenches his fist, determined to prove his worth and secure the guild's full backing. Back in the office, Crowley tells the chairman he understands wanting to test the kid, but questions if these conditions are way too harsh. He reminds him that even the chairman needed a full party and got heavily injured to clear it back in the day, so asking Pluto to solo, it is just crazy. Looking out over the city, he replies that if this kid is only slightly better than he was, investing their entire fortune is pointless. He insists that the one they back with their full power must be something far greater. He wants the absolute strongest pro of this era, just as the young necromancer finally arrives at the level 15 Goblin Cave. Having rested up, Pluto notes his mana is fully recovered from his clash with the chairman, putting him in peak condition. He confidently challenges the dungeon, selecting the absolute hardest Doomsday difficulty. The dungeon portal flares to life with a swirling red energy and glowing skull patterns. Without hesitating, Pluto steps right into the fiery red vortex. Nearby guards are shocked to see a lone student walk in, calling a solo run suicide even on the easiest difficulty. When the first guard points out that the kid chose Doomsday difficulty, the other laughs it off as a hallucination, claiming no low-level hunter has ever cleared it solo. Inside the dark cave, Pluto recalls how his textbooks describe goblins in just 2 words. He remembers they are exceptionally brutal, just as glowing eyes peer at him from the shadows. Pluto steps into the goblin cave, which is set to the brutal doomsday difficulty. Right away, a pack of creepy green goblins starts cackling from the shadows. Looking at the horde, Pluto estimates there are nearly 100 of them, which is no small crowd. But he's got an even bigger crowd on his side, immediately summoning his massive army of skeletal soldiers. With his army ready, he commands them to completely drown the monsters in a wave of bones. As his skeletons tear the monsters apart, system notifications flood in, and Pluto is thrilled to see how insane the doomsday difficulty experience multipliers are. With the first clash over, he stands enveloped in a blue aura, his status screen showing he's already at level 11. Looking down at the glowing remains, he notes that the entrance guard is completely wiped out. Since the path is clear, he decides it's time to push even deeper into the dungeon. As he walks, he laments that his summon range is only 16 feet, wishing he could just stand at the entrance and spam summons to clear the whole place. He can't help but smirk, wondering if he's dreaming just a little too big. Realizing his soldiers have already charged ahead, he quickens his pace to keep up with them. Just ahead, his skeletons easily crush an elite goblin, bagging him another massive chunk of experience. He takes down another enemy, noting how surprisingly light the resistance has been so far and wondering if he's already close to the end. But he quickly shakes off the thought, knowing the chairman would never make a test this easy. Suddenly, a nearby cave entrance begins to violently rumble as loose rocks start tumbling down. Feeling the heavy vibrations, Pluto warns his skeletal soldiers that something massive is heading their way. He immediately orders his summons to charge forward and attack whatever is hiding in the dark. To his absolute shock, one of his skeletal soldiers gets instantly shattered into pieces. He is stunned by this raw power, noting it is the very first time he has seen his soldiers get destroyed so easily. Looking ahead, he figures this must finally be the dungeon boss. A massive colossal goblin crashes through the rocks, prompting Pluto to smirk at its dramatic entrance. Realizing the boss's massive size, Pluto wishes he had time to prep his explosive gunpowder skeletons, so he orders his frontline summons to hold the beast back while he confers the rest. He gets to work converting them, preparing a massive explosive counterattack. But the massive boss suddenly spots him, forcing him to react instantly. He immediately activates his netherform skill to phase right through the devastating attack. Stepping out of the rubble, Pluto admits that he would have died twice over without this crucial skill. Now that he survived, he smirks and decides it is finally his turn to strike back. He glares at the giant beast with a terrifying glowing red eye. The massive goblin freezes in sheer terror as Pluto surrounds him with explosive barrels. Looking down at his target, he coldly tells the monster that it is nothing but ingredients on his cutting board. He confidently declares that he is the chef in charge of this kitchen. With a dark smile, he announces that it is time for the feast to begin. A massive explosion instantly engulfs the screaming goblin boss, blowing him to pieces. The colossal goblin is thrown backward by the force of a massive explosion. A system notification pops up, confirming that the giant monster is down and awarding him 12,500 experience points. Looking at the fallen beast, Pluto can't believe the doomsday boss went down so easily when he expected a brutal war of attrition. He complains that 12,000 experience points isn't even enough to level him up. As he walks away, he gets a nagging feeling that something isn't quite right here. Although the system says the boss is eliminated, he remembers that every previous clear always came with a proper completion notice. Since there's no completion notice this time, he realizes there can only be one explanation. His eyes widen as he figures out that this dungeon actually has multiple bosses. He recalls from his textbooks that some dungeons require defeating every single boss to actually clear them. Realizing there must be another boss waiting deeper in the cave, he leads his skeletal army forward into the darkness. Deeper inside, a group of heavily armed goblin guards stands ready to defend the passage. He smirks, noting that the place is packed with elite monsters just as he expected. He immediately orders his skeletal soldiers to plow right through their lines. As system alerts flood in with massive experience points, he realizes this sudden spike in elite enemies means the final stage is close. Suddenly, the massive shadow of an entire monster horde looms ahead under the dark sky. Hearing their distant echoing cries, he knows the dungeon boss must be right ahead. He soon realizes those earlier goblins were just the tip of the iceberg when he spots massive figures ahead. Two giant muscular goblins are locked in a brutal brawl, tearing into each other with raw fury. One of the massive beasts suddenly stops fighting and turns its glowing eyes toward him. The giant goblin growls in surprise, instantly recognizing the human intruder. But Pluto's eyes widen as he realizes he isn't facing just one boss, but three of them. To make matters worse, they have brought along a massive army of over 100 minions. With his mana already drained to nearly half, he wonders if he has enough fuel left to clear this massive horde. The lead boss lets out a deafening roar, ordering its army to kill the human. The ravenous horde charges forward, screaming their intent to tear him apart and eat him. With no time to worry about his remaining mana, he commands his skeletal soldiers to clash head-on with the charging horde. However, the giant goblin bosses immediately begin smashing through his forces with their massive hammers. As he watches the chaos unfold, he notices that these beasts are so bloodthirsty they'll even strike down their own allies. He realizes the power gap is just too massive, and his regular soldiers can't even get close to them. Since his remaining mana can't sustain spamming Death Glare until all three bosses are down, he plans to level up to trigger a 30% mana restore. If his mana runs dry before he can level up, facing three bosses means certain death, so he decides to go all in on a single play. With that, he sends out a massive wave of dark energy that wraps around the bloodthirsty goblins. Now that the stage is set, Pluto summons his legendary marksman, Archer, telling him it's finally his time to shine. He immediately orders his forces to focus their fire as his mana rapidly drains. To thin out their numbers, he directs them to target the giant goblin on the left first. Then he triggers his conversion skill, transforming his summons into highly explosive gunpowder skeletons. A massive fiery explosion completely engulfs the colossal monster. The colossal goblin goes down, giving him a massive chunk of experience and leaving him just one boss away from leveling up. He quickly orders Archer to take down the second boss, but Archer's magic arrows rapidly drain his remaining mana. Before the enemy can fall, Pluto's mana completely hits zero. He instantly realizes the terrifying consequences of running completely out of mana. Without any mana to defend himself, a massive goblin swings a deadly, crushing blow right at him. Pluto stands ready with his weapon as a massive shadow looms over him. His eye widens in shock as he realizes the danger he is in. Desperate for backup, Pluto calls out to Archer to make his move. Archer fires a massive lightning arrow that pierces right through the giant goblin. The system confirms the colossal goblin is defeated, granting Pluto enough experience to level up. But another giant goblin immediately slams its massive mace down, shattering the ground. Pluto barely avoids getting crushed, thinking to himself that it was an incredibly close call. He realizes that a second later, and he wouldn't have been able to activate Nether Form. Smiling in his glowing form, Pluto calls it his lucky day as Nether Form fully activates. With his mana significantly restored, he grins and prepares to strike back. He declares it is finally his turn as a giant glowing red eye appears behind the monster. The goblin is instantly paralyzed with absolute fear as Pluto's skill takes full effect. Seizing this moment, he commands Archer to pierce the paralyzed beast. The marksman immediately obeys, firing a devastating shot that takes down the colossal goblin and nets him a massive chunk of experience, leaving him blown away by the realization that his evolved soldier can easily one-shot a doomsday difficulty monster of the same level. With the evolution lock now removed, he knows he must choose his remaining 4 evolution slots with extreme care to build the ultimate undead army. The system screen confirms he still has 4 evolutions left to customize his forces. Nearby, a group of smaller goblins begin to tremble in absolute terror as they face him. Seeing their fear, Pluto smiles coldly and declares he won't show any mercy, ordering his skeletal minions to finish off the remaining monster for his own growth. A skeleton archer in a pirate hat draws back the string of his glowing bow. However, Pluto tells him to stand down and let the regular skeleton minions handle this round. He reasons that while Archer's charged magic arrows are incredibly strong, they drain way too much of his mana, which won't be sustainable as his legion grows. Because of that, Pluto decides his absolute top priority right now is finding a way to massively boost his maximum mana pool. Right after taking down the final elite goblin, he receives the notification that the dungeon has been successfully cleared, having wiped out over 100 mobs and 4 bosses, meaning it is finally time to collect his massive pile of loot. Meanwhile, just outside the dungeon, a couple of level 13 adventurers are arguing about how they barely survived a level 9 doomsday run. As they catch their breath, one of them wonders what became of the student who entered the goblin cave all on his own. But he quickly shakes it off, figuring the kid is either dead inside or already snuck away. Just then, a massive bell sound rings out, completely catching them off guard. One of them realizes it's the dungeon bell, explaining that 3 chimes mean a world record has just been shattered. The other guy can't believe his ears, completely stunned by the mention of a world record. They rush over to see what's happening, though one of them doubts a record-breaking party would ever need their help. But when they look at the screen, they're shocked to see that Pluto actually solo cleared the Doomsday difficulty. A massive crowd quickly gathers around the entrance, eagerly hyping up the mysterious solo clearer. Everyone watches the portal glow, waiting in anticipation for this new legend to finally step out. But as Pluto walks through, he's just complaining about his terrible luck with the warrior loot drops. His inventory is completely packed with heavy armor and weapons that are totally useless for his class. That's when he finally looks up and notices the crowd staring at him in dead silence. Dozens of adventurers just stand there, completely dumbfounded by the kid who just broke a world record. Pluto can only sweat drop, completely clueless about why everyone is staring at him like that. Pluto steps out of the dark dungeon portal, immediately drawing the attention of a massive, whispering crowd. The onlookers can't believe their eyes, completely shocked that the kid who just shattered a global record is just some young student. They complain that he looks way too scrawny and delicate to solo a doomsday dungeon, totally ruining their expectations of a giant warrior or a gorgeous mage. Hearing all the weird rumors, Pluto is just left standing there, completely baffled by what these people are even babbling about. But despite his average looks, the crowd quickly realizes it doesn't matter since he still managed to break the global record. Suddenly, everyone starts swarming him with party invites, guild offers, and healers begging to be carried, making Pluto realize he needs to escape the noise. As he runs away, he wonders why they're treating him like some kind of rare alien when all he did was solo clear a doomsday dungeon. After a quick sprint, he finally manages to shake off the crazy crowd and catch his breath. Now that he's in the clear, he pulls out his cracked phone to let Crowley know he successfully finished the test. Meanwhile, over at the Azure Dragon headquarters, Crowley is currently arguing with the chairman about Pluto's insane achievement. He warns the chairman that losing a talent like Pluto would be an absolute disaster for the entire nation. The chairman sighs, realizing the gravity of the situation, and asks Crowley what he suggests they do. Crowley proposes a compromise, suggesting they let Pluto bring at least one healer along to keep him safe. The chairman agrees that losing such a massive genius to a simple testing accident would be a tragedy. So, he officially gives the green light for Pluto to bring a single healer, but strictly draws the line at that. Receiving these instructions, Crowley wraps up his call with the chairman. He worries that the young man might be too impatient and rush into the dungeon unprepared, making it urgent to contact him immediately. But just as he is about to dial, his phone rings with an incoming call from Pluto himself. A pair of sharp, intense eyes narrows as the connection goes through. Crowley answers and immediately asks if he ran into trouble, reassuring him that the chairman is letting him bring a support class along. But Pluto cuts in, sounding a bit nervous as he tries to explain what actually just happened. Hearing the news, Crowley's eyes widen in absolute shock as he gasps out a question. Seeing his sudden panic, the chairman looks up from his desk and asks what is going on. Crowley stammers out that Pluto just solo cleared the Doomsday difficulty Goblin Cave and set a new global record, leaving the chairman completely stunned. The chairman immediately demands the phone so he can speak to the kid himself. On the other end, Pluto asks if Crowley is still there while the phone is being passed over. Taking the phone, the chairman eagerly asks if Pluto really just passed his test. Pluto confirms that it's indeed him, recognizing the chairman's voice on the line. The chairman breaks into a wide, toothy grin, praising Pluto for living up to his high expectations. He then tells Pluto that they have some very important matters to discuss in person. Hearing this, Pluto asks if he should head over to headquarters right away. But the chairman declines, explaining that he already has a specific time and place in mind. That venue turns out to be Sunview, the most prestigious restaurant in the country, where the young man arrives alone at 8 o'clock, wondering if he should head inside. He looks down at his hand, feeling a bit out of place in such a fancy spot. It doesn't help that he hasn't sold his dungeon loot yet and only has 10 gold coins on him, but he takes a deep breath and reminds himself that if he can handle monsters, he can handle a restaurant. So he tries his best to act natural, even if his stiff walking style says otherwise. When the hostess greets him and asks for a reservation, he nervously stammers out that he's there for room 1. The hostess is completely shocked to hear room 1, realizing he must be the VIP chairman Langley mentioned, and asks to see his status panel for verification. Once his level 12 necromancer status is verified, she politely welcomes him inside. As he walks past, she can't help but stare, knowing that Room 1 is strictly reserved for nation-level VIPs. She wonders who this mysterious Pluto really is to get a personal invite from the Azure Dragon Guild's chairman himself. A polite host guides Pluto inside, letting him know that Chairman Langley has left specific instructions for him. He follows the host through the luxurious dining room of the country's most prestigious restaurant. Nearby, Adrian Blackwood sits alone at a table, enjoying an expensive steak. Adrian is annoyed that his assassin, Cedric, hasn't replied yet, assuming he failed the hit and is too ashamed to face him. He shrugs it off, confident that once his older brother finishes his own mission, Pluto is finished anyway. But as he takes another bite, he spots a familiar face walking past his table. Adrian nearly chokes on his food, completely shocked to see that Pluto is still alive. Since he can't match Pluto's leveling speed, he decides to crush him with pure wealth instead. He slams his hand onto the table to grab Pluto's attention. Adrian smugly calls out, mockingly asking if Pluto made some big bucks to dare eat at such an expensive place. The host asks if there's a problem, while Pluto sighs, annoyed that he can't shake this pest off. Adrian sneers that this isn't a place for poor trash, bragging about the thousands of dollars required just to sit here. But the host quickly cuts him off, sternly warning him to watch his mouth because Pluto is a VIP guest. Adrian is completely dumbfounded, unable to believe that Pluto could possibly be a VIP. He bursts into hysterical laughter, telling the host that Pluto is nothing but a poor orphan from the slums. Adrian keeps mocking him for acting like guild royalty, but Pluto's dark, menacing aura suddenly begins to flare up. Terrified by the sudden pressure, the bully panics and screams that fighting inside the restaurant is strictly forbidden, warning that it will get them hunted by all 5 guilds, while the floor manager begs him to stop before his career is ruined. Yet, radiating this dark energy, he only coldly asks why he should bother calming down. Watching the terrifying pressure build, the poor manager sweats bullets, absolutely convinced a violent clash is about to destroy the establishment and cost him his job. But then, the dark energy suddenly dissipates as he casually mentions he merely wanted to show his classmate something. He summons a glowing blue bow and asks Adrian if he happens to recognize who it belongs to. Adrian's smug face completely vanishes as he stares in absolute shock, recognizing it as Cedric's bow. Pluto then drops a massive bombshell, casually stating that he killed the bow's owner himself and daring Adrian to bring on whatever other dirty tricks he has. This revelation leaves Adrian utterly terrified, trembling as he struggles to process how Cedric could have possibly been killed by him. After making his point, Pluto casually disperses the glowing energy from his hand. He then turns to the relieved floor manager and tells him he's ready to be shown to the private room, prompting the manager to quickly lead the way. Meanwhile, Adrian is left behind, seething with rage, unable to accept losing to a mere prospect in wealth, while desperately wondering how a C-Rank could defeat a level 18 hunter who never failed. As Pluto walks away, Adrian loses his mind and screams his name in pure frustration. Hearing the shout, Pluto briefly glances back over his shoulder, looking completely bored by the outburst. Adrian screams after him, warning that hiding behind the Azure Dragon Guild won't keep him safe, because they aren't the only powerful guild in the nation. Mid-rant, a massive hand suddenly clamps down on his shoulder, a booming voice asking if he is belittling their guild. Furious at the interruption, the young man whips out his giant battle axe, demanding to know who dared to touch him. He swings the heavy weapon with all his might, screaming at whoever dared to disrupt him, only for the blade to clash heavily against a spear. Adrian's anger instantly turns to pure terror when he realizes his opponent is a bronze soldier. Standing right behind the summon is Crowley, who sternly lists Adrian's offenses of publicly slandering the guild and assaulting its vice-chairman. Adrian immediately drops his weapon in a panic, desperately apologizing to Elder Crowley and claiming he had no idea it was him. But Crowley isn't having it, his eyes glowing with power as he declares that Adrian needs to be taught a lesson today. Terrified, Adrian points around and tries to hide behind the restaurant's strict rules, screaming that even the vice-chairman can't start a fight inside Sunview. Crowley just scoffs at the mention of rules, standing alongside a very calm Langley. Suddenly, Langley moves in a flash, instantly closing the distance and appearing right in front of Adrian. He coldly declares that he is the rules, charging up a fist crackling with devastating lightning right in front of Adrian's terrified face. With a single devastating strike, he absolutely obliterates the arrogant bully, sending him crashing through a window before warning the stunned onlookers that the young necromancer is a VIP of the Azure Dragon Guild, and anyone who messes with him will suffer the exact same fate. Outside the restaurant, bystanders are shocked to see someone get blasted right out of the building. The victim is completely knocked out, prompting people to call for an ambulance immediately. Onlookers quickly recognize the powerful figures responsible: Azure Dragon's chairman, Victor, and vice chairman, Aaron. The crowd gossips about why these two powerhouses are here, realizing Adrian got wrecked for provoking Victor's VIP, who must be Pluto. Pluto stands quietly amidst the murmurs as the realization of his status sweeps through the room. The restaurant manager, Jones, eagerly welcomes the guild leaders, but Victor dismisses the pleasantries to head straight to their private room. Before leaving, Victor gestures toward the shattered window and the chaos left behind. Jones quickly reassures him that he will handle the cleanup and take care of everything. Jones immediately orders his staff to evacuate the crowd, clean up, and get the injured Adrian to a hospital. Meanwhile, Victor looks at Pluto, highly impressed that he managed to solo clear a doomsday dungeon. Victor points out that Pluto doesn't have a single scratch on him, while Pluto politely greets the two leaders. Aaron casually cuts in, suggesting they head inside before their food gets cold. Pluto can't help but feel a bit chilled, realizing the usually friendly elder has a surprisingly savage side. Once inside, Aaron praises Pluto's incredible feat, saying it proves they were absolutely right to scout him. Pluto admits he nearly died and is currently completely drained of mana, feeling totally hollowed out despite his pristine appearance. As he stands with them right outside the massive double doors of Room 1, the elder tells him to relax because his mana is about to overflow, leaving him utterly confused. Suddenly, the heavy doors swing open to reveal a grand dining room with a massive banquet table. As they step inside, Pluto is completely blown away by the lavish spread, thinking the presentation alone screams expensive. Aaron then gently pats his shoulder and tells him to pick any seat he likes. Once they sit down, Aaron urges him to dig in and not be shy, knowing his energy must be completely drained. He explains that he ordered every single buff dish available, which catches Pluto completely off guard. Aaron explains that certain life support classes can cook special meals that grant powerful stat boosts like speed, defense, and strength. A quick mental image shows a glowing figure eating one of these dishes and instantly getting stronger. Pluto nods along, finally understanding how this high-end food system actually works. Aaron then offers him a piece of demon bien tenderloin to boost his mana recovery, and Pluto happily thanks him. As soon as he eats it, Pluto feels his dried-up mana source surging like crazy as a massive recovery buff activates. Aaron points out that while the effect is temporary, it's incredibly powerful. He then hands him an explosive red pepper, explaining that this one will boost his physical strength. Aaron keeps piling on more dishes, pointing out which ones boost agility, defense, and stamina recovery. Pluto happily stuffs his face, chewing with his cheeks completely full of the magical food. After devouring everything, he leans back with a stuffed belly, glowing with multiple active buffs and feeling like a total superhuman. Seeing him satisfied, the chairman wipes his mouth and says that now that he is full, they can finally get down to business. He starts by congratulating the young man on acing his test, officially welcoming him into the Azure Dragon Guild. But because his situation is so unique, the leader warns him they need to keep his membership a secret to protect him from jealous enemies. Pluto calmly nods and says he understands the situation completely. Victor then leans in and asks if Pluto actually knows who their real enemies are. Looking around the massive dining room, Pluto replies that he only knows about the constant hostility from nations C and Z. Victor confirms those nations are massive threats that constantly send assassins to wipe out their top talents. Aaron chimes in, explaining that's exactly why they're hiding Pluto, since a limit-breaking powerhouse like him would immediately be targeted for elimination. Victor warns they'll stop at nothing to destroy him, making Pluto clench his fist in frustration over why every world is always plagued by war. Sensing a sudden shift in the room, Aaron notices a terrifyingly intense killing intent radiating from Pluto for the first time. Aaron breaks the tension by pointing out that human wars aren't even the biggest threat they face. This completely catches Pluto off guard, and he asks what could possibly be worse than warring nations. Slamming his hand on the table, Victor asks Pluto if he's truly ready to hear the dark truth about their world. Pluto stares back silently, bracing himself for whatever shocking revelation is coming next. Standing tall against a massive moon, Victor drops the bombshell that to a certain alien race, their entire world is nothing but a giant hunting ground waiting to be harvested. Pluto is completely shocked to hear that their world is just a hunting ground waiting to be harvested, demanding to know what that even means. Chairman Victor Langley calmly explains that there are actually two types of rifts in their world: blessing rifts and calamity rifts, prompting Pluto to ask what the difference is. Holding up 3 fingers, Victor explains that blessing and calamity rifts differ in 3 major ways. He explains that blessing rifts are opened using special keys and appear wherever the key is used, whereas calamity rifts spawn completely at random. These unpredictable calamity rifts can emerge absolutely anywhere, from deep forests and mountains to the middle of crowded cities. The second difference lies in the monsters inside, as blessing rift monsters always scale to match the level of the hunter who enters. But in calamity rifts, everything is random, and at equal levels, these demon beasts are far stronger than anything found in a blessing rift, which leaves Pluto sweating in disbelief. Victor then points out the third and most critical difference, which is the direction of the rift itself. He explains that while hunters choose to enter blessing rifts and dungeons, the monsters inside those zones can never cross over into the human world. However, the terrifying demon beasts from calamity rifts are fully capable of passing through the portal and invading their world. Pluto is horrified by this revelation, realizing that these monsters can literally invade their world just like humans enter dungeons. Victor confirms this, reiterating that to these demon beasts, their entire world is nothing more than a vast hunting ground waiting to be harvested. He then asks if these uncontrollable rifts are the true threat, rather than Nation C and Z. The chairman clarifies that while scattered rifts are merely a nuisance, the true nightmare is a massive kilometer-high rift that tears open every 10 years alongside hundreds of smaller ones. Through this colossal tear, the Demon King himself descends to slaughter humanity, forcing the target nation to muster all its strength in a brutal conflict known as a rift war. To make matters worse, the chairman drops a massive bombshell, revealing that the next rift war is scheduled to strike in just 1 single year. Pluto is completely stunned by the short timeline, demanding to know why such a massive, brutal war isn't even mentioned in their history textbooks. Aaron Crowley chimes in to explain that these wars are absolute nightmares for civilians, so every government deliberately covers them up to avoid total chaos. Connecting the dots, Pluto asks if their own country, Nation A, is going to be the next battlefield. The sudden question catches both of the older men completely off guard, leaving them staring at him in stunned silence. Breaking the silence, Aaron Crowley asks the kid how on earth he managed to figure that out. Pluto calmly explains that he can sense a deep, bone-deep anxiety radiating from both of them. The chairman can only stare back, completely shocked that a mere student could read him so easily. Finally, Chairman Langley sighs and admits Pluto is incredibly sharp, confessing he thought he had hidden his dread perfectly. Staring down at his swirling coffee, Pluto silently notes that he only recognized it because he's far too familiar with that exact feeling of despair. A brief memory flashes through his mind of a trembling soldier facing the brutal reality of an impending war. Snapping back to the present, he accidentally mutters his thoughts out loud, leaving him completely embarrassed in front of the guild leaders. After quickly explaining how he deduced the battlefield, he asks how they knew about it, prompting Crowley to offer an explanation. Crowley reveals the existence of the Oculus Guild, a neutral international organization that trades prophecies for profit. While Pluto is amazed they can predict rifts 2 years early, Crowley warns him that knowing the location is only half the battle. Pluto points out the obvious danger of hostile nations taking advantage of a country weakened by a rift war. To prevent this, Crowley explains there is a strict 5-year non-aggression rule protecting any host nation, making violators global enemies. This explanation makes perfect sense to Pluto, who finally understands why their tensions with Nation Z suddenly went completely quiet. Chairman Langley chimes in, noting that global wars naturally decrease anyway, since every country pours all its resources into rift prep. Then, Pluto asks a daring question about whether anyone has ever tried crossing a calamity rift to reach the demon beast's world. The question hangs heavily in the air as Chairman Langley stares back at him with a tense, silent expression. Crowley immediately snaps at him to forget such a crazy idea, revealing that the last rift war nearly destroyed their entire guild. Hearing this, he looks down, realizing he was far too naive to think things would be easy when even the top guild was almost wiped out. But the chairman stares back with glowing yellow eyes, telling him that's all in the past because everything changes now. He pumps his fist, explaining that once his unlimited summons mature, they'll easily double their results against hostile nations and the upcoming rift war. Ultimately, it means Pluto's power alone is enough to reshape the destiny of an entire nation. Chairman Victor Langley tells Pluto he has exactly 1 year to prepare, promising the unconditional support of the entire Azure Dragon Guild. He then turns and instructs Crowley to bring out their special offering. Crowley steps forward and slams a heavy black briefcase onto the table. Pluto curiously asks what is inside, and Crowley invites him to take a look at the guild's welcome gifts. Pluto's eyes widen in anticipation as the briefcase clicks open, casting a bright golden glow on his face. Pluto is completely stunned to see a collection of rare treasures, and asks if they are really all for him. Crowley picks up the first item, introducing it as the chairman's personal treasure, a legendary artifact called the Phoenix Eye. The Phoenix Eye is a glowing green gem set in a silver eye-shaped frame that allows its user to teleport to any linked holder. Crowley explains that while legendary gear usually has strict level requirements, this incredibly rare item can be equipped at level 1. Pluto is blown away by how incredibly valuable a level 1 teleportation artifact is. Chairman Victor Langley adds that only 6 of these exist worldwide, originally gifted to the 5 major guild chairmen for emergency assemblies during national crises. Pluto asks what the chairman will do for his own safety if he gives this precious treasure away. Smiling confidently, Chairman Victor Langley reveals that the Azure Dragon Guild was granted 2 Phoenix Eyes because they are the strongest guild. He explains that for security reasons, Pluto's artifact is linked only to his, meaning only the chairman can teleport directly to Pluto's side. Pluto realizes this basically gives him the country's strongest guild leader as a personal bodyguard, though he notes its 72-hour cooldown. Crowley then presents the second gift, a legendary ring he acquired in his youth that also has a level 1 requirement. This legendary moonlight ring instantly boosts his maximum mana from 150 to 250. The vice chairman explains that a caster needs plenty of mana, leaving the young necromancer thrilled with its massive full moon buffs. The old man then grows dead serious, warning him that he'll be absolutely furious if he loses such a precious heirloom. Pluto nervously promises to protect the ring with his life before Crowley hands over some blessing keys. Pluto is excited to finally recognize something, thinking he can use them to grind levels in blessing rifts. But Crowley suddenly snatches the keys right back, leaving Pluto completely confused. Crowley scolds him, explaining that these keys are incredibly rare and not meant for casual grinding. He advises Pluto to save them for a leveling bottleneck to maximize their potential, which Pluto quickly accepts. Since the rifts are off the table, Pluto asks for other recommendations, and Crowley reveals they already have the perfect spot. That spot is the Apex Dungeon Hall, a massive facility built jointly by the nation's 5 major guilds. Pluto recognizes the name, knowing it boasts the highest difficulty and the best rewards in the entire country. He gets incredibly hyped and eagerly asks how he can get there right away. In response, the elder pulls out a glowing teleportation crystal, explaining that it allows instant travel to any Apex Dungeon Hall in the country. He suggests starting with Hall number 3 as it is designed for new recruits from the top 5 guilds and offers the perfect level range. Hearing this, the youth gets completely pumped, clenching his fist as he declares he is in peak condition and ready to start grinding. But as they wrap things up, the chairman chimes in to warn him to be extremely careful once he gets there. Pluto promises he'll be cautious since he knows those dungeons are tough, but the chairman warns him that the monsters aren't the only threat he needs to watch out for. This catches Pluto off guard, making him wonder what else could possibly be a problem. The chairman explains that the other hunters there are arrogant elites who will probably target a new face, so he'd prefer it if Pluto didn't actually fight them. Leaning over the table, he admits the real reason is that those so-called elites wouldn't stand a ghost of a chance against Pluto anyway. Pluto can only laugh and sweat drop at that, promising he'll do his best to avoid any trouble and keep everyone safe. Crowley adds that if a fight is absolutely unavoidable, Pluto should just flash the golden crystal to make them back off. With their business finally wrapped up, the chairman tells him to keep in touch using the Phoenix Eye if anything goes sideways. Looking down at his glowing ring, Pluto takes mental inventory of all the incredible high-tier gear he's just been gifted. As a pillar of light wraps around him to teleport him away, he vows to make both the chairman and Crowley proud. With his destination set, the system triggers the teleportation command. Instantly, a massive beam of blue energy strikes down from the sky, landing right on a traditional temple building. A sudden burst of bright blue energy erupts right in the middle of the dining room. The magical blue flames slowly fade away, leaving the chairman and Crowley alone in the quiet room. Crowley admits he's already excited to see how much stronger Pluto will get before they meet again. The chairman agrees that Pluto's growth is bound to happen, but points out they need to clear some trash out of his way first. Crowley immediately catches on, asking if he's talking about the recent assassination attempt on Pluto. The chairman confirms it, explaining that their intelligence has finally identified the person who hired the assassin. Turns out, it's the very same brat the chairman just blasted out of the building a moment ago. Crowley realizes why the chairman lost his temper so badly, noting that if they hadn't been in a crowded lobby, that blow would have crushed the kid's skull. Since this involves Pluto, Crowley warns they can't be careless and asks if the background check on Adrian is done. The chairman reports that Adrian is Pluto's classmate and an A-rank professional with an unremarkable tycoon father, but there's one catch. He reveals that Adrian has an older brother who serves as a captain in the elite squad of the White Tiger Guild. Crowley isn't worried about some captain, but warns that their short-tempered chairman, Tyler Brown, is overprotective, meaning any clash could trigger a massive war between their guilds. The chairman doesn't care, declaring that Pluto is their nation's future, and not even the White Tiger chairman himself could stop him from eliminating this threat. Hearing his resolve, Crowley asks what the plan is then. The chairman orders the immediate arrest of Adrian Blackwood, making it clear that if the kid resists, things will get ugly. Furious, he demands that his men carry out the order immediately. Crowley nods, understanding the gravity of the situation, and offers to handle it personally since it involves Pluto. Victor thanks him but instructs the elder to make a massive scene of the operation in the name of their guild. Crowley prepares to set off, stepping into a glowing teleportation circle as magical energy surges around him. He realizes the chairman wants to draw all the hostility from the Blackwoods and the White Tiger Guild directly onto their own guild. Victor explains that, because Pluto hasn't fully matured yet, they must shield him from danger by letting the guild take the heat. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the massive, bustling hall of the Apex dungeon, packed with hunters looking for parties. Voices echo through the grand hall as various leaders shout out recruitments for high-level dungeon raids. Standing amidst the crowd, Pluto is amazed by the sheer scale of the place and the constant stream of system announcements. He reminds himself that he's here to level up quickly, but wonders how to find the single dungeon that offers the absolute maximum experience. Suddenly, a cheerful voice calls out to him from behind, interrupting his thoughts. A young woman in a witch hat named Layla Shaw greets him, instantly noting how handsome he is and asking if it's his first time here. After he confirms it, she introduces herself as a local guide who works part-time helping newcomers navigate the hall. Ever cautious, Pluto immediately asks what the catch is for her friendly assistance. Impressed by his sharp intuition, Layla smiles and reveals her simple rate of 1 gold coin per question. Realizing he only has 10 gold coins left, Pluto flips one to her and asks which dungeon yields the absolute maximum experience. Layla repeats the query in surprise, and Pluto firmly confirms that he wants nothing less than the absolute best spot. She explains that since he is level 12, his maximum challenge level is 15, making the Abyss Spider Nest his best bet for experience, though he will have to wait. When he asks why, she warns him that the nest is crawling with endless tiny monsters spawning from every corner, making it a grueling grind where party formation takes forever. But he casually replies that he doesn't need to wait, leaving her shocked as she asks if he already has a party, warning him that only highly specialized teams can survive there. She points out a dedicated squad nearby that specializes in that exact dungeon. She excitedly adds that they actually just broke the record for clearing it. However, the reality of their victory is pretty brutal, with one of the armored warriors screaming in pain because a spider just ate his eye. Shaw uses this as proof, asking Pluto if he really thinks his own squad can do any better than a near-perfect 5-man team that still took heavy casualties. Looking completely unfazed, Pluto quietly admits that he doesn't actually have a squad. Instead, he plans on challenging the entire dungeon completely solo. This completely blows Shaw's mind, leaving her staring at him in absolute shock as she screams in disbelief. Pluto walks through the crowded hall, drawing stares from everyone around him. He wonders what all the fuss is about, prompting a very nervous Layla Shaw to quickly apologize. Nearby hunters burst out laughing, mocking the idea of a necromancer trying to solo the Abyss Spider Nest and telling him dungeons don't have kindergarten difficulty. Layla apologizes for speaking too loudly, but Pluto just shrugs it off, saying he's completely used to this kind of reaction. She desperately begs him not to go in alone because he'll get himself killed, but he just thanks her for the information and keeps walking. Looking at the dungeon screen, Pluto sees it has over 1,000 monsters, which makes him realize the experience points will be absolutely insane. Since it's his first time facing so many enemies, he decides to play it safe and start with hero difficulty to test the waters. A couple of badly beaten hunters watch him enter, calling him completely crazy for going in solo on hero difficulty after seeing how hurt they got. Adrian Blackwood's older brother scoffs that even he wouldn't dare solo this place, predicting the pathetic C-Rank Necromancer won't last 5 minutes before crawling right back out. Pluto steps inside the dark, web-covered cavern of the Abyss Spider Nest. Finding the decaying air absolutely disgusting, he immediately calls forth his dark power to summon his necromantic soldiers. As a massive swarm of spiders rushes toward him, he smiles at the incoming delivery and orders his newly summoned forces to wipe them out. As they charge into battle, system notifications begin to flood in, rewarding him with 25 experience points for every spiderling crushed. However, the tiny monsters are incredibly fast, quickly crawling all over the bones of his frontline fighters. Watching from a safe distance, Pluto realizes that one of his skeletons has been completely swarmed and can't even move anymore. He admits that these little pests are way more annoying than he originally expected, but then he smirks, remembering that he's got more than just basic frontline soldiers in his arsenal. With a quick command, he summons a gunpowder skeleton that runs straight into the swarm and blows itself up, instantly vaporizing dozens of spiders and bringing in a massive wave of experience. Seeing those numbers pop up, Pluto calculates that clearing out the hundreds of spiders left in this cave will give him just as much experience as a high-level goblin dungeon. Since he can summon an endless supply of these explosive skeletons, he snaps his fingers and decides to convert all his forces to turn this entire cave into his personal experience-grinding paradise. With this explosive strategy, he tears through the Abyss spiderlings, racking up massive solo experience and instantly reaching level 13. He immediately dumps all of his newly acquired stat points straight into his mana pool, since his entire combat style relies on these summons. Maximizing his mana is his top priority. Even with the massive boost from his Moonlight Ring, he knows he needs way more mana to unlock his next restriction removal. He has a strong feeling that unlocking the next restriction will solve his current mana crisis. Suddenly, a massive thread of sticky spider silk shoots out of the darkness, catching him completely off guard. Looking up, he realizes he's dealing with a massive, fully grown adult abyss spider. The giant beast is clinging to the ceiling dozens of meters up, way out of reach for his normal gunpowder skeletons. But he isn't worried at all, because he doesn't have to fight this battle alone. He summons his evolved archer and commands him to shoot the giant spider down. A lightning arrow flies through the air, followed by a massive explosion on the ground. The adult spider crashes down, dead, earning him a sweet 100 experience points. He is incredibly glad to have Archer by his side, as he would otherwise lack any reliable long-range options. Knowing his companion evolved into a Hexi marksman, he figures the sniper is capable of far more than just single shots. As they face down a giant spider, he readies himself alongside his summon and tells him not to let him down. Pluto stands ready as his explosive skeletons surround him in the fiery cavern. With that, he orders his summons to let the explosive gunpowder skeletons handle the spiders close to them. The plan works perfectly, and system notifications flood in as the exploding skeletons wipe out the spiders for easy experience. With those close-range threats dealt with, he tells Archer to target the enemies further away. Responding immediately, his summon activates his magic arrow barrage skill, firing a massive storm of glowing blue arrows. These glowing arrows rain down relentlessly, piercing the giant spiders and tearing them to shreds. Watching the destruction, Pluto is highly impressed, noting that the Hexi marksman's area of effect damage is just as broken as his single-target attacks. The only catch is the massive mana cost, as he realizes even his Moonlight Ring can only sustain a few more of these barrages. Fortunately, the annoying lesser monsters are all cleared out, leaving the path ahead wide open. Now, it is finally time for him to face the dungeon's massive glowing-eyed spider boss. Meanwhile, outside the dungeon portal, Victor Langley grumbles that it has already been 20 minutes without any sign of the boy. His bandaged companion scoffs that he's likely already dead, but the scout points out that a solo challenger's demise would have triggered a failure notice. The warrior then guesses he must be trembling in some corner, though the scout shuts that down too, knowing there is absolutely nowhere to hide in this nest. Realizing neither option makes sense, the warrior frantically asks if the kid is actually fighting the spider horde, which the scout admits is possible. That idea just makes the warrior snap, shouting that a mere C-Rank Necromancer couldn't possibly survive a swarm with just a few weak skeletons. Still, the scout silently ponders, hating to admit that a Necromancer might actually have a shot at clearing this place. He recalls the absolute confidence Pluto showed when entering, which gave him a strange feeling that the kid could pull it off. But he quickly shakes it off, reasoning that even if Pluto manages to wipe out hundreds of spiders, there's still one threat he can't hope to beat. That ultimate threat is none other than the terrifying dungeon boss, the Abyss Spider Empress. Deep inside the dark cavern, several glowing red eyes reflect the silhouettes of Pluto's skeletal soldiers standing ready. Staring at the massive beast, Pluto notes that the boss is even larger than expected, radiating a heavy scent of death. Pluto calmly dodges a flurry of blades as a skeleton warrior swings its giant axe. Right after, one of his skeleton soldiers leaps forward, swinging a massive axe to counter the beast. Standing tall with his glowing scythe, he casually asks if this is how spiders say hello. Since the beast started it, he decides to return the greeting in his own explosive way. A massive wave of fire erupts as the creature tries in vain to fight back against his summons. He just smirks at the chaos, noting that he expected nothing less from a dungeon boss. To shut it down, he unleashes his fear skill and orders the monster to freeze. A massive glowing red eye appears in the darkness, completely paralyzing the giant spider. Now that the beast is finally subdued, he steps forward, ready for the easy part. He orders his gunpowder skeletons to keep bombarding the target until the system confirms the Empress is dead. With the victory secured, he realizes that soloing a high-level dungeon is the ultimate level-up cheat, having already gained 2 levels from this single hero difficulty run. He figures one more run on Doomsday difficulty will easily push him to level 15. As he walks past the remains of the defeated monsters, he notices his inventory is getting completely packed with all the loot he's collected. Meanwhile, outside the portal, a waiting hunter grows impatient, wondering what is taking him so long after more than half an hour inside. His long-haired companion scoffs, telling him that a mere necromancer could never clear this place solo, and urges him to give up and leave. The hunter agrees that expecting anything from a low-rank class was foolish, so he quickly runs to catch up with his friend. But just as they start walking away, a sudden, bright flash of light erupts from the portal behind them. The hunter turns back in absolute shock, recognizing the sound as the dungeon's record refresh alert and realizing the impossible might have just happened. Langley and the other hunters are completely shocked to hear that the record for the Abyss Spider Nest was just shattered again so soon. A hunter wonders if that solo necromancer actually did it, but Adrian just laughs it off as a total joke. Right on cue, a massive system announcement alerts everyone that Pluto cleared the Hero Difficulty dungeon solo in just over 22 minutes. He casually steps out of the glowing portal, looking completely unfazed by his massive achievement. The crowd goes wild in absolute disbelief, wondering how on earth a C-Rank hunter could pull off such a feat. Pluto notices everyone staring and awkwardly wonders if he has some spider silk stuck to his face. Layla Shaw rushes over in pure excitement to ask how he did it, and he casually explains that his gunpowder skeletons handled the massive mob count just fine. Suddenly, Adrian shouts from behind, calling him a flat-out liar. He storms down the stairs, arguing that it is impossible to summon enough skeletons to clear thousands of spiders in just 20 minutes. Pluto just looks back at him with a blank stare, genuinely wondering who this guy even is. Other hunters in the crowd back him up, pointing out that necromancer cooldowns would only allow a few summons, which would get wiped out instantly. Adrian gets right in his face, demanding to know why he is lying if he refuses to share his actual method. He leans in even closer, suspecting there is something shady going on. He smugly asks if the rookie is hiding some dirty secret behind his impossible run. Pluto's eyes glow with a dark purple light as he summons a flaming skull, coldly asking if he really wants to know the truth. The arrogant bully is absolutely terrified, sweating bullets as he wonders why he suddenly wants to flee from a mere C-rank. He realizes that the terrifying look in those eyes means this guy has definitely killed before. The young necromancer calmly tells him to back away, releasing a dark, menacing aura that completely overwhelms him. Trying to reassure himself that his opponent wouldn't dare attack in public, he still screams out to the crowd, mocking him as a useless C-rank who doesn't belong here. His manipulation works, and a blonde girl in the crowd starts questioning how a low-tier necromancer even got in, wondering if he might be a foreign spy. Others join in the panic, whispering about whether Pluto's goal is to destroy the entire Apex Hall, while Layla Shaw watches in fear. Adrian gets a sick thrill from this, loving how easily he can sway the crowd's opinion with just a few words. A bystander decides to stick around for the drama, amused that almost everyone has turned against the young necromancer. But Pluto remains completely unfazed, summoning his skeleton soldiers to prove his class before addressing how he got into the hall. He casually holds up a glowing item, telling them that this is how he gained entry. The crowd instantly recognizes it as a golden teleportation crystal, a rare item reserved only for senior guild members, leaving everyone completely baffled. As Adrian panics over how a C rank could possibly possess such a treasure, Pluto prepares to address his identity. Instead of giving them an answer, Pluto just turns around and walks into the dungeon portal, telling them they can guess all they want because he has no time for games. Adrian is left completely broken and terrified, realizing that whoever Pluto is, he's definitely not someone to be messed with. Watching him disappear, an onlooker is amazed by his mental strength, noting that the insults didn't seem to faze him at all. In truth, he actually wanted to beat that idiot to a pulp, but held back to keep a low profile as Langley instructed. Stepping forward, he sighs, wondering if he has some kind of weird magnet that constantly attracts complete idiots. Shrugging it off, he decides to focus on leveling up and selects the extreme doomsday difficulty. He steps up to the glowing portal, locking in the absolute hardest setting available. The nearby hunters watch in absolute shock as they realize he just entered the high-risk dungeon again. Inside the abyss spider nest, the sheer volume of tiny swarming monsters is overwhelming. Pluto summons his undead army, ready to face the endless wave of creepy crawlies. While normal skeletons would struggle here, he knows his explosive gunpowder variants will absolutely thrive. The spiders swarm the gunpowder skeletons, triggering massive, fiery chain explosions that clear the cave. His screen floods with experience notifications as hundreds of spiderlings are instantly vaporized. The massive experience boost from Doomsday difficulty finally pushes Pluto to level 15. Right on cue, a system notification pops up to announce his next restriction removal. He smiles, confirming his theory that he gets a powerful new unlock every 5 levels. The new perk grants him infinite mana growth for every target killed, turning this dungeon into his personal paradise. A massive abyss spider lunges forward, but Pluto calmly dodges its sharp leg. His skeleton soldiers immediately strike back, slicing the beast and earning him some experience points. A system notification pops up, confirming that his maximum mana has increased after defeating the target. Looking at his glowing hand, Pluto notes that his limit break is working exactly as he'd hoped. He then turns around and calls out to Archer to take action. The skeletal marksman steps up, drawing back a glowing blue bow with incredible focus. He aims high into the cavern, unleashing a massive shot that lights up the darkness. This triggers his magic arrow barrage, summoning a giant magic circle that rains down countless glowing projectiles. The deadly rain completely decimates the spider swarm, filling Pluto's screen with endless kill notifications. Over 100 targets are wiped out instantly, boosting his maximum mana pool by an insane amount. Looking at the absolute devastation, Pluto's amazed at how this limit break lets him grow way faster than normal leveling. He realizes that even though his max mana's skyrocketed, his current mana still needs time to recharge. To save energy for the upcoming boss, he orders Archer to stand down, and the loyal summon complies. He points forward, deciding to let his gunpowder skeletons handle the remaining minor monsters instead. One of these explosive summons charges forward, carrying a massive flaming barrel on its back. They run straight into the enemy lines, triggering a chain of massive, fiery explosions. Meanwhile, outside the portal, a hunter asks if he can actually break their record, but his armored companion tells him not to worry about the terrifying Doomsday difficulty. Adrian's older brother adds that each difficulty spike massively boosts the monsters, meaning even a solo hero clearer would need at least an hour. But inside the dungeon, Pluto is already facing down the final boss after only half an hour. He then triggers a devastating blast that completely engulfs the entire area in a sea of fire. With the boss defeated, Pluto proudly declares that the job is finally done. He is thrilled to gain 2 levels in a single run, especially after the Empress yields a massive 60,000 experience points. He smiles, realizing that solo clearing means he gets to keep all this incredible experience for himself. Even better, removing his mana restriction has boosted his maximum mana by over 600 points. He then opens his inventory to check all the loot he gathered during the run. Since none of the items are useful to him right now, he decides to head to the exchange to clear his bags. Back outside, the hunters are shocked when the system sounds a loud alert, announcing that the record has been broken again. Adrian's older brother stares in absolute disbelief, unable to comprehend how a solo player cleared it in just over half an hour when their 5-man squad took nearly 40 minutes. The massive screen confirms that Pluto has indeed shattered the record with an unbelievable time of 36 minutes. The crowd goes wild as he emerges, hailing him as a god-tier pro. One excited hunter shouts that he just shattered the Doomsday Spider Nest record, making it 2 solo records in a single day. The onlooker can't help but admire his incredible power and mysterious vibe, even as the young man walks right past him to ask where Layla is. The fanboy is completely sold, grinning as he declares Pluto his ultimate idol and vows to train hard enough to fight by his side. He turns to his armored partner, totally fired up and ready to hit another dungeon right away. But his partner is staring blankly, completely crushed that a solo player just destroyed the record he spent a whole month and an eye preparing for. The broken hunter immediately calls his mom to say he's quitting the professional life to run the family fishing shop, leaving his buddy totally speechless. As the guy walks off to mention his lost eye to his mom, Pluto asks Layla where the exchange is, but she refuses to take his gold coin. He looks back, completely confused about why she's turning down her usual fee. She blushes and pulls down her witch hat, telling him to just consider it a special bonus for breaking the record. She realizes that since Pluto has a golden crystal and broke 2 records in one day, she absolutely needs to stay on his good side. So she cheerfully tells him to follow her, and he politely thanks her as they head off. Moments later, she leads him right into the grand exchange hall of the Apex dungeon. The clerk at the counter welcomes them and asks if they're buying or selling, and Pluto calmly replies that he's here to sell. The clerk secretly looks down on him, thinking a level 17 necromancer couldn't possibly have anything valuable, and lazily tells him to just dump his gear on the trade table. He looks at the tiny table and asks if they have anything bigger for his gear, prompting the clerk to internally mock him before explaining it's a premium trading platform where items stack infinitely high. Accepting the explanation, he gets ready to unload his inventory and selects the option to withdraw all his equipment. The clerk watches with a smug look, eager to see what kind of gear this kid could possibly have. Looking up at the ridiculous pile, Pluto is pretty impressed that the platform actually works as advertised. Meanwhile, Mr. Jones completely loses his mind, staring in absolute horror at the absurd mountain of loot. Mr. Jones is completely blown away by the massive pile of gear Pluto dumped, demanding to know how he managed to hoard so much loot. Hearing his shock, Pluto casually explains that since he always grinds solo instead of splitting loot in a party, he naturally gets way more drops. But Mr. Jones doesn't buy the luck excuse, instantly, assuming this guy must be a spoiled young master from some incredibly wealthy family. Seeing how much loot there is, the manager rubs his hands together with a sudden, overly polite smile, saying it'll take some time to appraise such a massive inventory and asking him to return tomorrow. After agreeing to come back the next day, Layla chimes in and suggests checking out the equipment mall right next door since he's already there. While they walk, he realizes his old rock staff and nightshade robe are completely useless to him now, meaning it's the perfect time for a serious upgrade. Since he needs that upgrade, he agrees to go, and a thrilled Layla happily offers to lead the way. Following her next door, Pluto is genuinely impressed by the sheer volume of gear on display and thanks her for the guide. To help him out, Layla immediately points out a rare Scythe of Death, pointing out that it's specifically designed for necromancers and boosts their summon limit. While she hypes it up as a god-tier weapon since an extra summon is a massive deal, Pluto secretly scoffs because his restriction removals mean he'll soon summon tens of thousands of undead anyway, making a single extra summon totally pointless. Because he turns it down, Layla is left completely dumbfounded, but she quickly recovers and points him toward a nearby display cabinet. Leading him over, she shows him an amethyst ring, explaining that even though it lacks special effects, the flat 50 mana boost is absolutely critical for his class. But Pluto isn't impressed at all, knowing 50 mana is a joke compared to his legendary Moonlight Ring, and with his mana restriction gone, he'll have plenty of points soon anyway. So he politely tells her he's got plenty of mana and wants to keep looking, leaving her staring in complete disbelief. Stunned by his refusal, she tries to wrap her head around a necromancer who doesn't care about extra summons or extra mana. Completely exasperated by his absurd standards, she finally snaps and demands to know what on earth he's actually looking for. He stares silently, his eyes narrowing as he senses a strange pull nearby. Behind them, a massive, dark purple shadow monster roars as they walk through the hall. Tendrils of dark energy creep along the floor, reaching toward his legs as he walks. The dark purple energy swirls around a glass display case nearby. Pluto realizes he was drawn to this spot unconsciously and suddenly found himself standing right here. He looks at the dark armor inside the display case and wonders if it was calling out to him. Layla asks if he is actually interested in the armor, warning him that it is completely useless for any summoner class. She explains that no one can summon 100 minions at once, making the sacrifice effect impossible to use. Pluto silently smiles, knowing that while summoning 100 minions is impossible for others, it is easy for him. He realizes that with this robe, he can constantly sacrifice his summons to create incredibly powerful elite soldiers. He grins confidently, realizing this legendary gear is absolutely perfect for his unique abilities. Even though the armor is clearly marked as not for sale, Pluto is determined to get his hands on it. Layla stares at him in complete shock, her face turning bright red at his intense expression. When Pluto asks about its history, Layla explains it supposedly dropped from a high-level demon beast during the last war. Pluto touches the glass, sympathizing with the armor for being locked away, just because others could not use its true power. He looks at his reflection in the display case and quietly promises the armor that he will free it soon. He asks Layla if she knows any way to get it, but she flusteredly snaps back that she has no idea. However, she then mentions there might be one way to get the robe, though she's not sure it'll actually work, prompting him to ask what she has in mind. She explains that the Apex tournament is held every year, and the winner gets to pick absolutely any item from the exchange as a reward, though she's unsure if a display-only piece is eligible. Hearing this, a smug look appears on his face as he reasons that if it's not forbidden, it's allowed, meaning he just needs to win the whole thing. Layla is completely flabbergasted by his casual attitude, shouting to ask if he has any real clue what kind of tournament he's talking about. She goes on to explain that the event is co-sponsored by the 5 major guilds, meaning only their absolute best elites can enter, making victory nearly impossible. Meanwhile, Pluto just stares at the display case and promises the robe he'll free it soon. Seeing him ignore her, Layla snaps and asks if he's even listening, warning him that A-rank fighters are just the baseline and there are even S-rank geniuses in the mix. Pluto calmly turns to her and says he heard her just fine, but he really doesn't care that the participants are all top-tier guild elites. With a dark, confident grin, he declares that his victory is guaranteed, leaving Layla completely baffled by where he gets this insane level of confidence. He then asks when this year's tournament actually starts, and she reluctantly tells him it's happening very soon, in just 2 weeks. Looking at his glowing crystal, Pluto clenches his fist and decides that 2 weeks is plenty of time for him to maximize his power and get ready. Realizing that having a high max MP is useless if he can't replenish it, he decides to head back and rest, promising to find her tomorrow. This leaves the guide completely baffled, wondering why he's going to sleep with only 2 weeks left instead of grinding, and she concludes that he's just totally unpredictable. We cut to Pluto's apartment building under the starry night sky. Inside, a shirtless Pluto walks out of the bathroom, glad he finally has some time to recharge. But before he can relax, he decides he needs to check on one last thing first. He summons Archer and asks him how many skills the Hexi marksman actually has, and the skeleton replies there are 4. So Pluto orders him to open up the skill panel, and his loyal summon immediately complies. The screen pops up showing the first 3 skills, which cover enhanced vision, magic arrows, and a massive arrow barrage. Then there's the 4th skill, the star-piercing arrow, which deals true damage and completely ignores defense. Looking at the screen, Pluto wonders why he's never seen Archer use such an incredibly powerful move. Archer explains that the skill requires 3 full minutes of channeling, making it almost impossible to safely use during active combat. On top of that, if he limits his mana consumption, the arrow ends up too small to cause any real destruction. Pluto realizes his own massive mana pool could easily fix the size issue, but that 3-minute wait is still a fatal flaw. Deciding to put the matter aside for now, he sits on his bunk bed, ready to enjoy some rare sleep. He tells Archer to keep watch while he rests, and the skeleton promises to guard him. Lying down, Pluto marvels at how incredibly soft his simple mattress feels after everything he's been through. He thinks about how he never got to experience this kind of comfort in his previous life. Suddenly, a voice starts shouting at him to wake up as his eyes slowly flutter open. He opens his eyes to see a dark silhouette of a soldier standing over him, calling him a rookie. The veteran is absolutely furious, yelling about how dangerous it is to fall asleep while on watch. He confronts the rookie directly, demanding to know what would happen if the enemy decided to strike right then. The rookie tries to apologize, but the soldier cuts him off, lecturing him that a guard's mistakes put the whole squad's lives at risk. Just then, Caleb steps in and tells Archer to take it easy on the kid. Caleb sarcastically asks if they are going to blame the entire enemy invasion on a single rookie. But Archer argues back, reminding Caleb that they are in hostile territory and any slip-up means death for all of them. Caleb calmly replies that he knows exactly what Archer means, which is why he is awake. He explains the rookie has not slept in 2 days and offers to take his shift, smiling at how the kid can sleep on cold concrete. Hexai Marksman sheepishly laughs, saying he is used to sleeping on the ground, which earns a dry comment from Archer. Caleb looks out and dreams of the day the war ends when he can finally sink into a real soft bed. Suddenly, a massive missile comes screaming down from the sky directly toward their position. Someone's eye widens in pure terror just a split second before a devastating explosion rips through the building. The fiery blast completely engulfs the area, leaving the surviving squad members staring back in absolute shock. He suddenly snaps his eyes open, waking up in a cold sweat. One of his summons stands by his bedside, greeting him as he wakes up. Sitting up on his bunk, Pluto realizes it was just a nightmare and notes that it's time to head out. He quickly gets dressed, adjusting his tie and preparing for the day ahead. A system notification pops up, confirming his maximum mana is now fully restored. Feeling in absolute peak condition, he clenches his fist, ready to go all out. Suddenly, a massive flash of golden light erupts in the hall, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Nearby, hunters gossip about a mysterious C-Rank Necromancer who shattered 2 dungeon records in a single day. Ignoring the rumors, Pluto walks past them, focused on finding Layla to plan his next move. Luckily, she spots him in the crowd and waves him over. Layla suggests heading to the exchange first to collect the gold from his gear sales, and he agrees. She asks if there's another reason he wanted to meet up today, sensing he has something else on his mind. He gets straight to the point, asking if there's a dungeon with even more monsters than the spider nest. Layla is completely flabbergasted, explaining that more monsters doesn't automatically mean better experience points. Seeing his stubborn silence, she sighs and reveals that massive large-scale dungeons do exist. She explains that inside the dungeon, the monster count can easily reach tens of thousands on massive maps where a single run takes dozens of hours, making the difficulty spike like crazy despite the huge rewards. On top of that, she points out that Apex Hall has a strict rule requiring a party of at least 3 people to even apply. Hearing this, he realizes he needs to find a team, but since established groups always reject newcomers, joining one on short notice is basically impossible, meaning he'll have to recruit at least 2 more people himself. But then he looks right at her and smugly notes that he actually only needs to find 1 more person, leaving her completely stunned. Layla immediately panics and yells at him not to count her in, refusing to follow him into what she calls a total death trap. Even when he offers to pay her in gold, she argues they'd still be 1 short, claiming only an idiot would join 2 random scrubs for a massive dungeon, just as a hand suddenly pops up in the foreground. Both of them stop their bickering and turn around in surprise to see who's interrupting them. It turns out to be a young man in a sleeveless tunic who nervously raises his hand and asks if he can join their party. Layla can only stare at him with wide, blank eyes, thinking to herself that right on cue, an actual idiot has arrived.